So this is the release, 3 SKUs. These are 3 of the large A5 3D texture phase. I say large A5 because this is the biggest size. We actually released several this year, and I'm gonna, once I talk about these 3 new designs, I'll kind of do a recap of what we've launched this year, just in case you're new to seeing these. I'm gonna show some great makes from some makers that made for Sizzix, so a shout out to all of you guys for doing that. I love these designs, and this is really why it's such a weird launch, because you're thinking, wait a minute, this is like the first week of October, you're launching 3 rando SKUs that have nothing to do with Halloween, and you would be correct. And that would be because when we launched, the first release I think was in May of this year, then we did a couple for the Halloween release and a couple for Christmas. But then as we were talking, I'm like, well, I really have some favorites that just I really want. I don't want to wait, another year for that. And so Sizzix was like, okay, let's do it. But, it won't be until October. I'm like, I'm okay with that because these would be what I would consider my favorites. It is Brickwork, Cobblestone, and Numbered. And Numbered is like a letterpress, kind of like my studio table. I just love the idea of it. They create some very, very cool effects. They are from the Vault, so they are Vault designs. I touched on that just at the very beginning. Vault meaning these designs have existed before, but in smaller sizes. So I want to just quickly talk about that. Hopefully I won't confuse you or myself, because I even tried to do a recap this morning and I think I confused myself already. So if I'm wrong, then Sizzix can shout out and say you're wrong. All right. So first thing, 2 of these designs, okay, that would be Brickwork and Cobblestone. They exist in 2 other sizes, okay? They exist in what I would just call like the standard. I don't know if they refer to them as A2, but like the standard embossing size. And when we talk about this, not only is it a different size folder, but even the scale of the art. So you can see like the size of the bricks, different size. Okay, and I'll kind of bring in Brickwork. So we've got, this is the new, look at that texture. Oh my gosh, just the corroded bricks, all of that. This is the new large A5. This is the standard size brick. This design has been retired. I did still see it out there when I Googled this morning, so definitely check it out if you're into this and you like the idea of this folder, and hopefully the makes will inspire you and you love the look of it. Just know that this smaller scale is very cool, because I'll talk about it, but you can cut this apart. Zoe Hillman's done some really cool makes where she's like created fragments of it, because it is very easy to cut this apart and have like fragments of brick exposed. Very cool. But this one also came in a mini, and I didn't do very many 3D minis with Sizzix. I'm not sure why actually, but I know specifically that we did minis because this scale, this is the mini, so you can see like, look how tiny that is. Create these tiny little bricks, same texture, same detail, but these are scaled for the village. So if you have any of the village collection or the tiny houses and you wanted little bricks, that's really why we did this mini version, because as you can see in Brickwork, all the cool texture, but just scale, also retired. So if you're loving brick and you're looking for these, I did find them when I Googled this morning, but get them because they're gone. Okay. Then we'll get into Cobblestone. So Cobblestone also has a regular size. I don't think this one is discontinued yet. I don't think so. So this particular one, as you can see, smaller stones, great size, but this one also came in a mini, a tiny one. The mini though is retired. Like I said, I didn't want to confuse you or me. I just always find that it's important that if I'm going to do a live for something, I kind of want to do my homework and see, are the older SKUs still available or did they retire? But there again, you can see from Cobblestone, 3 different sizes of rocks. And this one is very cool because you can use it not only for a background or a backdrop. This is great, of course, for the holiday season because you can do a cool fireplace scene or even outdoors. But this is beautiful in the springtime. It's a great backing, believe it or not, for florals, because you can also use it, kind of as a garden, or I've seen makes where people have used it as a base where it actually becomes a pathway or a walkway if you're doing vignettes. So just a really great functional design. Numbered also came in just a standard size. It did not come in a mini. That's what I'm saying, but I think it'd make a cool mini. And it's still available. So Numbered is just a smaller size. I would have to say, out of all the folders, one of my most favorites, also one of the most challenging to do, simply because for this particular one, I wanted so many different levels in this 3D. It posed a bit of a challenge when we first designed it, but of course, once we nailed it, it is perfection, because I wanted to still see a block, right? Like a print block or a letterpress, but I also wanted even the numbers to be at different height. And when you see it in, just say, white paper, you may not notice that detail, but when you start inking it and painting it and doing all the cool things, you will notice that certain numbers are higher than others. And so they take a medium much stronger than others, which I just love. So that's kind of the review of these 3 particular ones. That would be Brickwork, Cobblestone, and Numbered. And you know kind of the size options that were available, are available, could be available, okay? So now we're going to talk about like how they actually transform, like how do they look, what can you do with them, and then I'll get into makes and some of the older ones. So let's just clear the deck just to make it easier on me, on you. All right, put this off to the side because I'm going to come back to it. I'll just bring in one at a time. Let's first start with Brickwork, okay? So a 3D texture fade, the reason it's called a texture fade and not just a standard embossing folder is in my very beginning time with Sizzix, when embossing folders were just kind of a plus and minus, like positive and negative, we created a lot of designs where it wasn't a perfect design. The design would kind of fade away. And that's really where I came up with the name texture fade. So all of my embossing folders, I've just named them texture fades because I like that name. And I think that it really captures what the design, what it set out to do. And I think what it still does. I do believe that. So a 3D is going to have a lot of different contour and text, different than say a multi-level, which has like a step, a rise and a fall, or traditional folders. You can use these in any kind of machine that you have that will fit that 6-inch opening. Some machines are a little bit more challenging than others to get this big folder through, and I will demo that. I will talk about some tips on working with the folders. But first, we're just going to talk about the detail of Brickwork. Now, it is beautiful. Now, this is a piece of white cardstock. I'm going to demo a little bit of all of these 3 folders. I want to do a shout out, though, to Zoe Hillman, who really, I think, captured Brickwork. If you haven't seen her tutorial on her blog, I highly, highly recommend it. Mario, if you have a link, if you could put that in. I'll put it in the description box following the live as well. But she did so many different color variations, so many different looks. I have a different twist on mine because she uses gesso to kind of do the white lines, and I do not have a steady hand with a paintbrush. So I'm going to show you a little trick. Of course, mine is not as beautiful as hers, but it's good enough for me. Like I still see a little bit of pink and yellow, but I love it. I love the idea of this because this particular one uses a lot of different mediums. It uses paints, it uses sprays, it uses crayons, it uses a lot of things, but I love the look of it. So it's just cool because it could be captured in so many different ways. And you'll see from the makes, it doesn't always have to be a red brick wall. It could be anything you want. But I love how we can transform just white watercolor cardstock into splattery, yummy colored brick. Okay, so that is definitely a fave. And if we have time at the end, I'm going to attempt to try to demo some of these on camera. Demoing 3D folder is a challenge. Okay, let's get into Cobblestone. Like I said, this has such a great kind of rock work vibe that it can be adapted many different ways. I just went with like a traditional stone look. Again, white distressed watercolor cardstock, transformed, but this one uses oxide, it uses ink sprays, it uses archival, and the shine of this is done using resist spray, which I'll talk about. And you don't always have to create shiny, but I love the idea that, you know, if you wanted to really create a great contrast for a background, especially when it comes to adding florals or whatever, I just love the look of this. And again, this could be adapted into any color palette that you want. So I do love that. I love the shiny stone of Cobblestone. But like I said, my favorite would be Numbered. I do love it. So Numbered, it's very cool because, again, distress, watercolor cardstock. That's just a foundation I like simply because watercolor is nice and thick, but it also holds up to a lot of wet and dry techniques. And you'll see when we demo, like to achieve things like this, you have to do a lot of layers to create it. But I love this one because this one gives it just a really cool look of those print blocks, right? The letterpress. Now this one, it's not as shiny as Cobblestone, so it doesn't have the same, let me grab that one just to kind of give you a visual comparison side by side, right? See how this is really reflective and this one's just, it's kind of shiny, but not as, I knew I should have kept them all here instead of trying to play Jenga over there. So see how Brickwork is matte. This one, what do you want to call it? Satin, semi-gloss, I don't know. And then this one is really shiny. To achieve this look, like if you like the idea of kind of just a subtle varnish, this one is done using distress microglaze. So distress microglaze is great on a surface, not just to seal the ink, because it will seal distress ink and oxide, but it gives it a really great finish if you apply it generously, which I did. Just kind of work that in the paper with your fingers. So it just gives it a little bit of a reflection versus just matte paper, and certainly not the shine that resist spray will. So that's just an option when it comes to just treatment. And you could apply microglaze to any design. Just think of it as like, it's a sealer, but it's also a really cool finisher. Okay, if you haven't used it just as a paper finisher, it's very cool just to use it that way. But then I also love the simplicity of numbered in an industrial way, right? Creating just metallic letterpress. I love the look of metal. It has an industrial look, but you're going to see from the makes that you can even isolate certain numbers and be inspired. This one, very simple. It's literally a piece of, and I'll demo this one later as well. It's just Ideology metallic craft stock, which is a craft background with a printed metallic and black paint. That's it. So this one's like the quickest, but I love, again, I love the look of it. Okay. So knowing what we know about folders, it's just important to understand, like, why would we do different sizes? Why would we do different scales? Because I think in any type of creative medium, be that die cuts or stamps or stencils or even embossing folders, having options of scale and design really helps us when we're doing certain makes. Maybe you're doing a vignette, maybe you're doing something home decor, maybe you're doing a panel, maybe you're doing a junk journal and you want, the background to have a bigger scale than the elements you put on it. That to me is why there's value in having different size pieces. So I love the fact that Sizzix is willing to do designs like from the vault in many scales, because I love creative options. I mean, who doesn't, right? But before we get into the makes of these, I do want to talk about other folders that we've released this year. So now if you're like, okay, I'm digging the big scale, just let me catch you up. Only because, you never know how long these are going to be around. These were all released this year, but that doesn't mean they stay forever. And any maker, I think, especially over the last couple of years, realizes that more and more products get retired sooner than later. All right. So this is lumber. This is a large one. And you could go back. I've done videos on this. If you go to timholtz.com and just type in Sizzix 3D, you'll see the video I did specifically when we launched these. I did some demos on these techniques as well. But I love the look of this wood. Again, watercolor cardstock. This one I did much like Cobblestone, where we added the resist spray. You can also just take any kind of colored paper, whether that's craft, whether this happens to be craft stock that was black, and then brayer over the top of it. So this is just brayered with paint, really simple. But I love that wood because, again, they're planks, so you can easily cut them. You can use them for signs. You can manipulate them on a background to give it all different orientation. I just really love working through that. Then we have typewriter, probably my favorite of the particular release that I did, because we've got all of these, well, they're type keys. This was from a photograph. This was like the strike keys from an old typewriter that has the upper and lower case. What's cool about this is, besides that you get this beautiful background, again, this was just white paper. I demoed this one too in that previous live, but you can also cut these out. So after you emboss them, you can cut them out. You can spell things on cards or makes. It's just a really good folder to have. Even if you do something as simple as, this was just craft stock that was embossed and then sanded. So you don't need any ink, any nothing, and you can still create a cool look or create that industrial look, again, just like I showed you with numbered, where it's just metallic craft stock and black paint. So you get some really cool effects when it comes to working with it. Foundry, one of my favorites. Love that, where we can use alcohol inks, and we can use paints, and we can use crayon, and we can just transform paper into industrial goodness. So these are great, again, for doing backgrounds, foundations. And because it's paper, you can even wrap it around things. You can wrap it around vessels like, maybe a container or a can, or put it onto paper mache or chipboard. Just great options when it comes to working with embossing folders. This one, now it starts to get confused because I never remember entangled or engraved. This one I believe is entangled because it's kind of this swirly, twirly, entangled flourish, but I love this one. This one is actually also metallic craft stock, but this is black and it's just some salvage patina paint on the top. But it looks like old metal, doesn't it? Or taking metallic and using black paint. But the detail of these, really amazing. And this could even look like tooled leather if you did just different colors. Maybe you worked with watercolor cardstock. Just really, really cool. And I'm going to talk about just tips on working with embossing folders, because not all machines are created equal. Not all papers work well with certain folders, because there's a lot of, believe it or not, there's a lot of technology into a 3D folder to get the pressure to balance and also keep you from, turning your folders into bananas. Because I think in today's world, with adjustable machines or people being all shim savvy, which I don't think is a good idea to shim things, you think too much, the more pressure, the better. Not necessarily. The more pressure when you put through a folder, you're going to curve this thing like a chip or a banana, versus multi-passes is going to give you ultimately the same outcome, or seeing different techniques with a machine. So this next one, I think this was botanical, I think. Again, do not quote me on names, please, at this point. But I love the idea of this one's done with a distress embossing glaze, distress spritz. It's just pretty. A great background that would look good in metallic, would look good watercolor, would look good plain white cardstock, but also it gives just a beautiful look for maybe spring, or just something that you want a little bit more organic. Speaking of organic foliage, we did this one this year for Halloween. It is a leaf print, if you will. Beautiful for fall leaves, but what I love in particular about this one, this design was designed like an inlay into concrete. So imagine, when you look at the texture, that leaves kind of went into, say, wet concrete or plaster and then peeled away, and you get this relief. But the other side is dimensional leaves. So you can see that the leaves are all puffy. So many folders you can use either side, but this particular one is really cool. I don't have a favorite on this one. Sometimes I really love just the detail of the veins of the leaves, and other times I really like kind of the fluffiness of the other leaves. It is like fossils, Jen. I think that's really, it's just a great, great background. And again, it could be vibrant for autumn colors, or it could be much softer. You get to control that when it comes to just working with it. And then we have, oh my gosh, cracked. I do love a good crackle. This is so nice. This one works not only on paper, but if you have any type of acetate, this is so cool to emboss acetate to create frozen or kind of a shattered window. It's really, really cool. This one I demoed again, watercolor cardstock. But I love the look, because once you learn the basic techniques, which I've covered in previous videos and I'll talk about in this one, you can just switch up your colors and get all your trickery out to really manipulate the design to your liking. Okay, I do love that. I would love the skull in the larger size. You and me both, Debbie. I love that skull. It was, I wasn't sure. I love it. It's one of my favorites. I'll even show you in the older one, the smaller one, but I would have loved that big one. I'm not sure. Who knows? Maybe I can talk him into it for next year. Who knows? This one, Kaleidoscope. I just love the design of this. Probably what I think is the most underestimated folder. Kaleidoscope is the same scale as the regular size, but we did this in a bigger scale. I love the facets of it. This is one of those folders that actually emboss these designs that are faceted. What's beautiful about this one is, one, you can just emboss in any metallic cardstock and it's immediate magic. But think about the uses. At Christmas time, it could be snowflakes. In spring, it could be florals. During Memorial Day, Labor Day, it could be fireworks. It could be so many different looks to this folder depending on how you color it and how you treat it. It's a beautiful one also just because of how it hits the light. So this is one that I also know that the regular size was discontinued, and this was just seasonal. So when it's gone, it's going to be gone. So I do encourage you that if you like the idea of any of these designs, think about that. Don't wait until they retire and then you have to pay crazy money on eBay. And then this was the one that we just did for Christmas. This one is called engraved because it is like engraved metal. I love the look of this. It has a beautiful look like a snowflake, but don't be fooled by that because when you cut this up, it is an amazing flourish or even works with industrial elements. So you can, pair this one with foundry and typewriter to create some different effects. But I love no matter what metallic color you use, even if you have like glittery paper, like for Christmas, this is craft stock sparkle. So this is already just that printed sparkly. That's all I did. I didn't do anything else. No sanding, no inking, no nothing. But what a beautiful background for holiday cards. Because again, the bigger scale doesn't conflict with whatever elements you put over the top of it. Okay, so I absolutely think it's incredible. I think this one might have sold out already for the season, but I know that Sizzix is bringing some back because I don't think it's just seasonal. I definitely think, it's great for winter, but I'm like, can we just do like another run of this? Because I think that, if you miss out for the season, you'll really be sad to not have it. It's beautiful for Valentine's Day. It's just a cool folder. So there you go. That was a review of, gosh, it's amazing what we did this year in the large A5. But real quick, before I get into the demo, I'm just going to pull this in because I just like making backgrounds. So I have piles of just, maybe I'll emboss in different colors. Like this is where I did numbered on wood grain cardstock. I just like that. But we were talking about Sinister. There we go. Look at that. That was the folder we were talking about. Yeah, that was done in wood grain. And I've demoed all of these, but look at that one, done with archival. Some people are into the skulls. Some people they get a little freaked out, but I think if you're into Halloween, was the ultimate Halloween background. I love the orientation of this. It kind of looks like an X-ray. So good. You can make it look like bone. You can add colors if you like. Spritz. Could you tell it was a favorite? Like I couldn't stop with ideas. I do love folders. All right. So let's get into the makes, shall we? So shout out to the makers who made for Sizzix and Sizzix for sending the makes to me for live. This one, Stacy created. This one is using the large 3D brickwork. And again, we talked about bricks not having to all be red. So I love that she just took a vignette and created this really cool kind of rusty, crusty brick wall and then added a wreath on it. So it doesn't again, I don't want you to always think like red brick Christmas. Totally great for Christmas, by the way. But it's just a beautiful background, even for something like botanicals. I think that to me is really cool. So you can take the wreath, you can add florals, you can add the bow, and then how she did that stamp, there is beauty in simplicity. Totally right about that. There is beauty in simplicity because I think seeing texture for what it is, adding your designs, some people wouldn't think of doing something like florals and putting with brick, but it makes the ultimate backdrop for things like that. So really beautiful make, Stacy. Then this one, Vicky created this, and I did message Vicky because when I saw it, I was like, okay, hold on. Before I even go live and make a fool of myself, I want to make sure I kind of understand it. And I did, which was good. So this one, you have to kind of see it to believe it. It is that graffiti style, but here's the thing. And I know Vicky shares the details on her blog, but you kind of have to fill in the blanks with your imagination, and I love that. But this is where she starts with paper, and I know Vicky's here, so if I skip a step, you could say it. She then cut out the word boo, right? That's from, I think this is from Big Frights or something like that. Inked it, inlaid that. Then these are other dies, the skull, the splat, that's also die cut and inlaid. And when I say inlaid, it's like taking a sheet of paper, cutting something out of it, inking and popping it back in. Cutting this out, popping it back in. So essentially you have a flat piece of paper with these die cut designs that have been colored and placed back into your sheet of paper, okay? And you're gonna have to put some sort of stabilizer or backer on the back of it, right? Then emboss the whole thing with that Brickwork 3D, which gave the whole thing just like this continuity of like a brick wall with painted graffiti because the design goes in and out, and then worked her magic on that. Isn't that cool? That's freaking cool. I can't wait. Because I kind of rattled that off. She's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, but I know what I said, but I still hope that she shares on her blog because I want to see it, at least just some photo steps, because it's a pretty impressive result, isn't it? I just love that. Love the idea of that graffiti, especially with the word and just incorporating just dies like that splat die and then the skull in there. Brilliant, Vicky. You nailed it, Vicky, because that's just super cool. But again, oh, and there's even bats up there. I just saw those. It's like, I get it, but like seeing it is really believing it, right? Cool. I love that. I love different twists. Kubert created this card because, again, I love that the makers, I mean, there's not a ton of makes in this particular live, but you don't need a ton of makes to really understand like what you can do with the design. I love the idea that Kubert created these beautifully colored bricks for a holiday card, because I think that the colors really lend themselves. It still is very festive, but it has a vintage nostalgic touch, and I absolutely love it. And this, of course, is one of the dies that came back this year. I think this was Christmas ribbons. And then these poinsettias, these came from the vault that we did that had those really cool old school words. But this greenery is just, isn't that great? Look at that little bit of rock candy on there, a little chunky. Can you see it? It's like diamonds in there. So good, and some splattering. So, just seeing like these 3 makes already, you're like, okay, I can use Brickwork like in the spring. I could, I can use it for Halloween, but also create kind of an industrial graffiti look. And oh, okay, Kubert just showed us that, yep, and it can be Christmas as well, and doesn't have to be red brick. It could just be beautiful colors. Isn't that nice? So good. Then Tammy B took us to the crypt. Look at this. So this is an Etc. This is the tombstone kit where it's like it's an Etc. tag and it's got the header and the footer, but like the whole entire thing is covered with these grungy, grimy, crypt looking bricks. And this to me is the magic of paper, right? Where you could take a folder, emboss your paper, do all of these cool things, add it to a heavier substrate, and then your brain is like, what? Like, how do we have chipboard that's like textured? Because you would never guess it. It's just paper that's on there. And I love how she incorporated this, also used dies. This is one of my favorites. This is Spencer. He's retired, but just such a cool skull to put on there. And then of course she's got the haunted, right? She's got that haunted house. I love these gates, these iron gates. I think these are already also retired. But then she used a lot of other elements. And when I say retired, it means that as of this video, I did check to see that they were available out there. So you can check that out. But she used so many different dies. Like this is from the original vault that included like a fence piece and some tombstones. I love the urns from, I think this was like from the Colorized. So again, when you're creating and you get like a new background, it does give you the opportunity to create whole new settings and scenes for dies you may already have. So keep that in mind. But how lucky and fortunate are we that we have these 4 makes of brick, and they're all so not only distinctly different, but even the colors used by the makers are so different, from just that grungy, grimy green, almost stone crypt-like that Tammy did, or true red graffiti brick that Vicky did, just very seasonal like Kubert did, or of course like a stone work that Stacy did. Isn't that cool? So that to me is what I was saying. Like, you just seeing the makes is enough inspiration to be like, okay, I can see that there's use for that. And that large scale really does play with those designs much better, especially if you like doing larger pieces. All right, cool makes. I agree. They are fab, so fab. I love really all the pieces. And it isn't hard to do when you're embossing something that big, when you think about it, right? It can cover a lot of real estate really quick when you're doing that. Beautiful. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about Cobblestone. So Cobblestone, Sharon did this one. And what's fun about this particular folder, like I said, that it could be very rock. Okay. These are raised, but the other side of it's very cool as well. This one, I think when I look at the other side of it, it has a very kind of animal print to it, kind of giraffe looking. So it does have like a kind of a safari vibe on the back. I don't know why. It must just be the shadow this creates, but I suppose this side too. Some people even said like, alligator, crocodile, but it is cobblestone, it's stone. But I love how Sharon just went in and used the background, did some beautiful like patina look to the back, and then used the funky cactus dye. So again, if you think about a texture or a design, it could easily be something that you want to just use for texture. So even though you can't, you can make out the fact that it's stone, but like to me, living in Arizona, This reminds me of like turquoise, you know, like chunks of turquoise rock in the background, and then she has that cactus. So I do love the idea of seeing a texture, but applying completely different colors to it. And yeah, this one surprised me the most. I looked and I was like, what folder is that? She even added some of the, I don't think you can see it, but it's the sparkle paste because it's got some glitter in it. It's got just a little bit of sparkle. So it does really look like stone because, you know, sometimes, you know, especially in the minerals, you get that little sparkle. Just love it. Just a really, it surprised me when it came to looking at that color. I was like, okay, that's cool. This next one, Stacy did. Love the whole Halloween. I love that she's got, you know, the bats with the ghosty. This is from Stampers Anonymous where she's got the ghost. These are little threads that she's got, the little bats, taking the bats for a walk. But I love how she used that cobblestone to, again, create more of a, just a much lighter stone effect. So you don't always have to make them grungy and dark. You can just emboss it, use some inks, use some sprays, use some oxides. But how fun is that for Halloween? It makes for a great background. And again, the scale of these folders is the magic. I'll be honest, when Sizzix first told me, you know, hey, what do you think about, we're going to do some large folders. Do you want to do some of your designs? I'm like, why do I need a bigger folder? Like, I'm perfectly happy, you know, with the A2 size. And I really underestimated the difference the scale in the art would make, especially when you put elements on it, because it is such a bigger piece that your detailed elements, I think, show up more. It's not conflicted with the background. But I like the mix and match, because even if you have different scales, imagine having like different panels of stone in different scales. I think that would be really cool. I love that she's got a little bit of like mummy cloth around the edge. Look at all the stitching. It's just a fun card. But the background, especially if you're going to make cards, just think about that. You could 3 cards from one background or 2.5, but still the idea, brilliant. I love the color, and I just love the idea of it. Juliana created this one. Again, if you're a Halloween lover, you're going to see that, you know, these embossing folders really lend to any kind of style. Funny that she used Spencer as well, just like Tammy B. There's Wicked, that was from the Vault. And then a lot of that greenery from the Vault wreaths. There's that spider web. But I love how she just did that gray stone. You can see the rock candy in there. See all that sparkle? Beautiful. Tinted rock candy. So this one, she tinted black, so it really just sparkles like diamonds. Man, if you haven't tried chunky rock candy yet, that's all I'm saying. You really should try it. What it adds is, it is wild. It's like, I just wonder, how did I live all this time without this vintage glitter? I love it. Oh, she's even got, just holding it in the light, there's a little craft stock sparkle in the web. Anyway, beautiful card. Again, just showing you the difference of incorporating that background, that cobblestone, and kind of seeing how you want to kind of give it. You don't need like I said, don't need a lot of inspiration to understand, like, well, there's the stone, there's a stone, there's a stone. Yeah, definitely need to make some black. See? Whew. All right. Moving on to Numbered. So Numbered, it's funny because Numbered has the most makes, so it's like, okay, I'm sure it was a favorite for a lot of other people as well. It's just a cool one because you can use it for so many things. First off, we'll talk about birthday cards, right? So Rochelle created this one. I love just the fresh colors of this. It is perfect for a birthday card because it's all about counting the years. So I love how she just used this color, just little ink, little sanding. I love the different strips of color that she put. See, they're just different breaks in there, and how they're just all part of that same embossing. And then of course, using one of the large, I never know the name of dies. It's like, I forget. It's big something or bold something. This is bold text or something. I don't know, but it's a good one. There's also stamps like this, so you could do the die cut or the stamps. But I just love that it makes for a great birthday card. And really, there's makers that kind of gave their own spin to birthday cards. So Rochelle created this one. Sharon created this one with alcohol ink. She used that die from the same set. This one's got rock candy, a little chunky in there to give a sparkle. This is inked. So that's what's kind of creating that deboss color in there for a birthday card. Is that fun? Colorful and pretty. Bold text. Thanks, Jen. And then Kuber created this one, Make Today Count. So I love that as well, where she actually went and hit the high points with black. Take an ink pad. You could use a brayer. You could do paint, little splattering, but the same colors. And this one's a little shakety shake. So see, she created a shaker out of that using the negative, because you can use the positive and the negative, just the negative. And I love how she layered this with just a little translucent and some shakety shakes in there. But isn't that what I find always interesting? And I say this in many of my lives, because I always would joke with Mario that, like, I think the makers have like a secret meeting of like, what are you making with that? What are you? And because, like, what are the odds of 3 birthday cards using the same background, using the same type of die set, but completely different colors, layouts, and ideas with it? Like, and where nobody used the same. That's just crazy to me. I think that's so cool that the creative mind just can think of different ways, and how we just don't have the overlap. I think that, oh, so Kuber's like, shh, yeah. It's like, what are you making? I just think that's great. But super good ideas, because depending on what your style is, if it's more clean and simple, if you like to, have a little vintage vibe, or if you really want to go mixed media, I love the idea that you can use folders to, I think, honestly, it is a secret. I agree, Mario. It just gives you the opportunity, I think, to just make it yours. All right. Then we kind of just a couple more makes, and then I'll get into demos. I showed not a ton, but you don't need a ton. This is plenty of inspiration to, I hope, get your mind charged. This one from Vicky, no surprise, I freaking love this. Okay, this is an etc. tag. So there's nails through it, there's rusty screen, there's gears. It should surprise none of you how much I love this make. And so this is using numbered. So I love how she used the folder for the background, but then went in and isolated the numbers. And keep that in mind on this folder, that there are numbers that you can isolate. Even if it's cut off, that just adds to the charm. And I love that, we tried to repeat numbers. So you have like, a tall 5 and a short 5, different 1s, different 2s. So we really tried, and not all of them are going to be full numbers, but you'll still, as far as the duplicate, but you'll have numbers to create whatever you wanted, because even the cutoff is still usable. But I love how this has just been painted, just kind of dry brush to give it that color, but just 1225. I mean, the ideas of this, it's like, once you kind of do this technique, you can do this for, again, I think, Valentine's Day, anything that's got just a significant date, birthdays, anniversaries, you can do a year. I just love the idea. But then she even took like the ideology tack nails and hammered through these, because these are mounted on like chipboard, or possibly even etc. Not sure. Vicky and her trickery. I'm telling you. Yeah, it just is. Like, I see it, and it's like she's always just, she's tricking me. But I love the idea, because you can still, in there, they come through the back. But that's all right. I'm sure she has her own table to hammer on. That's right. Yeah, exactly. So good, right? Isn't that just, it's like, wow. I love the idea. All right, then we got one more, because this make, Tammy B did, and I got to tell you, it is story time. So I'm just going to start with the back, because she used numbered. It's a lot, but she used some other ones in here as well. So this is an ideology vignette tray. But I love how Tammy went in and did a very festive background covering the entire thing with numbered, right? But this is the story. So how cool is this with all of these different textures? So we've got numbered, kind of like your countdown to Christmas. Maybe this is, this could be a countdown calendar. It could be so many different things, but the ideas, because if you've been following Tammy B, you know she is a storyteller in her makes. I love how the fireplace, she used the cobblestone. So this is the fireside. So this is the one of the classics that we brought back, okay? And this was only brought back for the season. So when it's gone, see ya. This is Jolly St. Nick. This was the first colorize we ever did. A lot of pieces, but man, he is larger than life and amazing. And he's almost sold out for the season. I love how she's got the little coffee. There's even a little calendar that he's like looking back on the wall that she took from Ideology. She used a lot of the dies that came back, like the festive things, and then even mini Christmas. There's the tree, and look, it's even dimensional. She added that dimensional tree, the ornaments. She's got the garland, and look at that little reindeer inside the wreath and the stockings. It's like so many cool details, but this is where I was saying that, like cobblestone, from a scale perspective, look at how well it works with fireside, especially if you want to make a bigger area. Because even if you wanted to just take a scene where you're like, you know what, I want to make this scene, forget Nick, okay? And I want to put tiny lights, and I want to light up the fire, and I want to put it in a square vignette box and use it on my mantle to light up. Great. Or, hey, I love this. There again, I want to just kind of do this, you know, be good for goodness sake with Santa. When you see big makes like this, I love that Tammy always goes big with the details, but I always want to remind you that you can take elements, aspects of any kind of make that you like, and you can create your own. Be that a vignette, be that a card, be that inside a wreath. I mean, he would sit perfect inside a wreath as well. But just, I'm going to hold this up close and I'll go a little slower just so you can see the coloring. Like these are stamped. I mean, I noticed all these little details where she just stamped that with the ticking to create those little striped socks. The packages also stamped. I love the ornaments where they're on this tree, and really the whole tree being dimensional, brilliant. And then the ornaments just stacked up. I love all the packages. You know, it's like Santa's creating a little chaos. This is still my favorite little detail because I absolutely love that little reindeer. That's from like from the Festy Besties, Mario. Remember that reindeer? So good. St. Nick, but I mean, look at his detail. He's one of those that, like, yes, he's a lot of pieces. Yes, he's a labor of love, but when you make him, he's very cool. And another thing about this make, not to be creepy, but his head is not attached to his body in the dies. So there's many people that have just done the colorized part of his head and use that head on makes because he has just such a great expression. So just know that, like, the way the die is designed, you could still just do the head and not build the body every time, but you could do both. Again, I love the little cup. Tammy made the door. Look at that, just using rectangular dies, wood grain cardstock. So cool. Oh, the background, I just noticed the background is all done with lumber. Look at that. Oh, so good. Oh, so good. The little skates there. Yeah. So brilliant make, especially when you're, I mean, this is a way to tie in a lot of designs in there. And this could be something that you just create. So amazing inspiration. Again, a shout out to the makers. I know Mario's been posting links in there. I think that's pretty fab. I'm just going to finish up with this one. Juliana created this card. I was very surprised, I'll be honest, when I looked, because at first when I picked it up, I don't know what it was, but I couldn't grasp the background. Like, I'm like, what background is that? And then when I saw that it was numbered, I'm like, I love it. I love the idea of just using the background, probably because I didn't identify a specific number initially. I mean, I know I probably should have for the 8s, but really I thought it was like eyeballs, right? Mario's like, oh, it's eyeballs. And I'm like, no, it's numbers. But I love how Juliana just used this for the back of a Halloween card and using the trick or treat. This is one that came out of the classics, just using that instead of the silhouettes, using the wreath. But I mean, so good. I'm just going to put all of those, all of those in there. When you talk about working with that, I really hate to flip this over, but you get the idea of numbers and how they could be used like in so many different ways. Who knew, right? That's what I love about that folder. Of course, that, and then I'm going to put in all those little beautiful birthday cards. Fab. Crazy good. Crazy good. Do you? Yeah. I just love it. I do love how the makes just created things. I agree. The colors on Juliana's card, especially little details. I'm just going to show you real quick because you know I'm a lover of candy. I love the little candy elements that she popped into that wreath. Isn't that cool? I could gush on these makes for hours because every time I pick them up, I just see more and more details. But yeah, the colors are really vibrant. This is such a fave. I'm just glad that die, even if you're not a fan of the silhouettes, you know, the trick-or-treaters, some people are, some aren't. Just this die itself, the fact that you get trick-or-treat all welded together, and I love how they're stacked up. It's just good. So much inspiration. I love it. How do we do, Mario?
Really good.
It was cool. I told you it would go fast. Like, seeing the inspiration is like amazing. All right. Let me get a couple of things. Hey, Mario, can you grab me something? Sure. I knew I would forget it. Yeah. Can I get just a studio mat, a glass studio mat? I knew I'd forget it. I had everything else set, and then I forgot the foundation to work on. All right. I'm just going to talk about the folders. No, the white, please. Thanks. I'm going to just talk about the folders, give you some ideas of how I did some of these techniques. Not all of these techniques, thank you, are like quick start to finish. So some, you know, I might have to talk through some of the tips because it, you know, you need to dry it, but you get the idea. And hopefully I can, let me just get this squared up in there. There we go. Hopefully you'll be able to kind of understand what we can do with 3Ds. If you're having issues, I'll try to, you know, read the chat and see if I can answer questions on 3Ds. But it's one of those things that you gotta work on for this. Okay. All right, I'll take some surfaces. So I talked about papers. You can do all types of papers. Use what you have, but it depends on what you want to do to the paper that I think should ultimately choose like what you're creating. Can you show embossing acetate? I can do that, Lisa. Hey Mario, can you in that top drawer in the file, you're going to pull that open and there should be a thing that has like alcohol ink. I'm looking for the clear Duralar. So it might be in the UPO file. I have my papers filed, by the way. Do you see it? And do you see in the package, in the clear packages, do you see one? Yes. Is it clear? There you go. Thanks. Yeah, I'll take that. Also, is there acetate in there? Is there any clear that just says clear? It could be shrink plastic. No, just in the file in general. So shrink is going to be too heavy. I'll go ahead and use Duralar. I can also use some thin acetate. Okay, in the closet. Go ahead and go in the closet. On the right in the back, there's a Simon box. You'll see it. It's just sitting on top of the things. Hey, listen, that's what this demo is all about. It's kind of just answering those things. Do you see it in there? I'm going to grab it. Yeah, it's a Simon box. Got acetate. There we go. Let's see. Let me grab some acetate. It's nice. Let's see. Do I have this? Oh, man. I could have sworn I'd have some extra acetate. I don't see it. I don't see it. No, I probably used it. Oh, did I use it? Sorry, guys. We're going to have to use Duralar. I just didn't want you to think you needed the brand. It could be any kind of acetate that you want to use, all right? I can't find it. If I have it, but I did use up all the acetate. But we're just going to talk about, like, just using something clear. Now, this happens to be Duralar. It's just a brand. This is a heat-resistant, very thick, alcohol inkable acetate. Okay, so this is one that you could manipulate with heat. But the other thing that when it comes to creating, you could try recycling packaging. You can just try different ways, especially when it comes to acetate. Question, why is it called the Simon box? Because it's a box from Simon's Stamp. That's why it's called that. So when you're working with surfaces, especially with embossing folders, thinner surfaces are going to emboss differently than thicker surfaces, obviously. Sometimes thin surfaces could actually puncture, and sometimes thicker surfaces don't tend to hold a specific texture, okay? This one's going to be just fine. Now we're going to talk about machines, okay? Because typically, when it comes to machines, you need to use what you have. I think it was on Sunday when we talked about using, we used the Bigshot in the Simon class. It was just a lot of fun using this new machine. The last time I did the 3D folders, I used my Switch Plus. I just wanted to shake it up and just use a different machine because I didn't want you to think that you could only emboss with a Switch Plus. Switch Plus is nice because it's much bigger, it's motorized, it just does that. But even if you have a regular machine, yeah, Nikki says she has a Vagabond. Again, use the machine that you have. But I have to say that I was really surprised, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all. I was surprised how much pressure the Bigshot had because I typically use the fold away that I designed with Sizzix. That machine has been retired. That had a lot of pressure. I was surprised how much pressure like the Bigshot has. I think it also has to do with the low profile, which made embossing large 3D folders pretty easy for me. So I'm just going to take out the handle. I love that the handle's back here for storage, and I'm just going to click it in. All right. When we're using 3D folders of any kind, you need the platform and a single cutting pad. So the thin die adapter and that second cutting pad, my advice to you is just put it away. Get it out of your eyesight because you might, forget to remove this. That's going to damage the machine. You might try to put a second cutting pad in. That's going to damage the machine. So really important that when you're working with this, okay, that you kind of set yourself up for success. When we talk about the cutting pad, you'll see that the cutting pad that comes with your machine is the same size as the platform. That being said, so is the folder. So let me grab one of these folders. So the A5 is pretty much the same size as everything. If you try to use this sandwich, meaning what comes with your machine, I think you're going to find this to be incredibly challenging, next to impossible. I won't say it is impossible, but I'll say next to impossible. Because when you use a machine, the machine needs to bite down on, we call it the sandwich, most people call it the sandwich that you're building, to get everything through. And if the sandwich can't give, see how there's no give? it hits the rollers this thick, and the rollers, it's almost like trying to drive over a speed bump or a big mountain, right? A speed bump, your tires can kind of go over it, but if it's really high, it's like you have to kind of give it the gas to get over the top. The rollers just don't want to do that, all right? So my suggestion, if you're going to use a standard machine, is to purchase an extended cutting pad. They sell them, I think it's just by the each, it's just one, because what it does is it's the same thickness of the cutting pad that you have, but it extends it past that. So your machine is going to bite this first. So see how it's going to give it a little flex? So it kind of goes under the roller, and then it just takes this sandwich better, okay? If you have a Switch Plus, you don't need to worry about it because it's a much bigger thing, and the cutting pad covers the whole thing. But on a typical machine, whether that's a Bigshot, a Vagabond, a Foldaway, having that longer cutting pad really does make a difference and puts less strain on the machine. So that's what I'm using. So now I'm even getting rid of that other cutting pad, because at the end of the day, we need a base, our folder, and a single cutting pad. And I only use this extended one for embossing. You can see that it doesn't have any cut marks in it. Okay, so that's kind of what we're doing. Hope that makes sense, all right? And I mean, it's easy. You can keep this with your embossing folders. But if you happen to use it for die cutting, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the same cutting pad. It's just longer. All right. So a couple of things to follow. Let's start with, well, I'll do brick. I'm going to end up doing all of them, but I'll just start with the brick just to give you the idea. All right. Okay. Yeah, this is a new machine that just came out. I love the Reimagine. I love that it's got a really low profile. It's got little grippies and it just sits on the deck, but also like that this is the handle, and you're going to need this when you're embossing. You're going to see, like, I think that's probably what I was most impressed with when I was using 3D, because if you're doing a manual machine with these folders, you need a little torque. And I think being able to grab the machine and like push down helped, okay? If you're going to use cardstock, and I will get to acetate, I promise. But if you're going to use cardstock, you want to always wet this first. How much water? It just depends. You don't have to use a ton of it, but some water is better than no water. Could you emboss without water? Yes. Does it hold better detail if the paper is slightly damp? Yes. If you soak the paper, will it start to tear apart? Yes. So I just give it just like maybe a mist on each side. Some people kind of work the moisture into the fibers of the paper. Whatever works for you, you do you. You do that part. Okay, so I'm just going to take numbered. Numbered is the most challenging, so I want to start with the most challenging because, like I said, it has the most rise and fall. I'm just going to position my paper into the folder, not up to the fold, okay? The reason I don't want to do it up to the fold is because sometimes this will bend backwards because how this goes through the machine, it's going to try to slide this. So I just put it right at the end. You'll also notice that it has a little instep right here, so it's really easy to kind of place your fingers and just align your paper. All right, then you're going to close it. Now, there's all sorts of speculation as to which part you need to put in first, the fold or the bottom. You know what? I don't know the rules, and I can't say that I play by them, but I always just put the fold in first because I feel when you put the fold in first, it just allows whatever's here to still work out of the back versus the back and everything is kind of pressing against the seam. Sizzix is here. Maybe they'll say, "You are absolutely wrong, Tim," or "Bravo." It could go either way. All right. Do you usually emboss first, then color? No. Sometimes I color and then emboss, but I prefer to emboss first and then color just because I like that. So I think it's fun. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place this. So you can see I've got a little bit hanging over each side, and I'm just going to place this into the machine. Okay. I need this to kind of bite first. So what I tend to do, you can't really see, but I got my belly right here. Oh, see, Sizzix said bravo. So maybe I did do it right. That I don't normally do. Okay, I'm just gonna, well, it's just my mat is moving. So if you can just hold this at the back.
Sure.
Normally I'm on my glass and the machine grips. Okay, and just push that into the machine. Just push that folder in. There you go. Perfect, thanks, I got it. So normally when I'm working, because I don't want to show you my belly, but I push in with my belly just to get the machine to bite it. So the machine's already bit onto that. So you can see it just grabbed onto it. Once that's done, it just makes it so much easier just to hold your hand here and just run this through. It just,
the belly push.
Well, or whatever you need, but you do need to kind of push this in, but not, you don't always need to push in the back because not all 3D folders, even though they're 3D, have the same amount of pressure, okay, if that makes sense. So I'm going to just roll this through and it's going to pop out the other side. Now, if you want to do another pass, you can do another pass. I would say to check it first. I will say, like when 3Ds came out, it was always like 3D 3 times, run it through 3 times. I don't think that's always true anymore, because if you have thinner papers or something, it's just going to destroy it. So I tend to just look each time to see if I'm happy with the design. And in this case, I'm thrilled with it. I love the texture. And I think the other reason is because someone asked that question as well, do I emboss and then color? I do. I like to emboss and then I'm going to add some color and I will emboss it again. So that's probably why I only do a single pass, because I know this is going to go through 2, maybe 3 more times. It just depends on what I'm going to do to it. So I hope that helped. All right. My folder,
So
flat.
Add that to the
Flat.
marketing.
The belly push, there you go. Belly push for the win. So your folder's still flat, again, because I didn't shim it. I know there's people that are like, oh, I want added pressure, so I'm going to add a shim or a cereal box, whatever. That's where things go wrong. I think you just need to kind of follow just the direction of a machine, okay? Let's do a little metallic. So any kind of paper, and I will get to acetate, I haven't forgotten. Any kind of paper, if it's paper, do you wet it? Yes. So even metallic paper, yes. Even glitter, yes. Even vellum, you could. Vellum's not really paper, it's kind of more synthetic. But if you want to wet it, it wouldn't hurt. But anytime I run paper through, yes, I'm going to wet it. All that does is it softens the fibers of the paper and it just helps hold the design or detail better. It doesn't make it indestructible, but if you find that, say, your paper is breaking, certain papers, if they kind of crack, wetting the paper will definitely help with that. It'll help eliminate that kind of crack and fracture of a paper because you're softening the fibers of the paper. So metallic is printed on one side. So if I wet the printed side, it's just going to beat up. So that's why I'm going to make sure that I wet at least the craft side. Okay, let's do the same folder. Why not? And then I'll do some for brick and cobblestone. Let's see if I need to still do the belly push. But this is, honestly, this is why a lot of people really prefer a motorized machine, because a motorized machine, like once you put that in, it's just going to grab and go. So, you know, you have to just do what works for you. But like I said, that was one pass on the Bigshot. And I mean, even look at the little detail in there. Crazy. But see what I mean by the numbers? Now you can, I think, really see it in white, how this, forget the number, just look at the block. This block is higher than this block, which is higher than this block. There's a lot of detail in this, even before we get into the numbers. And then same thing, because this block is higher, this number is higher than this number in this lower block. It's wild. So cool. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna just try to do the belly push first, just to see if, see, I did it. All it needs is just a little leverage, that's all. All right, and I'm just gonna roll this through. And then I always put my finger here because it's gonna come out with some force. Did you hear that? And I don't want it shooting across the room, so just setting your finger there will help with that. Let's take a look at this metallic one. Ooh-wee. So good.
Bam, look at that, beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? All right, so this one has a little crack. Now, why is this cracking? Not because of the paper, but Ideology metallic craft stock is a printed color. So it's not a foil, so it's just the printing, but this is not going to be visible at all when we go and add our paint to it. If you wanted this to, if you like, but I don't want it to crack at all, then just add more water. You could totally wet the paper more, is good. All right, let's do some others, just so I can have some pieces embossed, and then we'll get into like inking and coloring and all that. So I'm going back to Distress Watercolor. Does it matter which side, smooth or bumpy? It doesn't really matter, because the texture that you put is going to take over either way. Doesn't matter. So I'm just going to put that in. This is Brickwork. Place that down. So I always want to square that up. And also I always want to square this up and again, make sure that I've got a little start and finish of that cutting pad. Place this in. See, you already know my tricks. You already know what's happening with the little belly push back there. All right. This, my belly push. Okay, let me show you this. So you see that little angle right there? See, this is what live is all about. So do you see how, like, when I push with my belly, it went crooked? If you notice, which I did, as soon as I was going, like, it was like, do, and then as I got here, it was like, oh, this handle's getting a little tighter. don't force it. Don't think, oh, it's going to self-correct. That's crazy talk. One, it could shim off some of your cutting pad, and two, it could really put unnecessary strain on your machine. So just back it up, square it up, and go back to the races. These are all choices that you're making as a maker. There we go. I didn't even need the belly that time. See how smooth it is? That I knew right away because, like I told you, I was so impressed. I'm like, my gosh, this thing just takes it. So these are all tips. Oh, look at that. My word. These are all tips that are important when you're doing any kind of embossing. If things are like, all of a sudden there's just added pressure, yeah. And that's, I mean, for those that own a motorized machine, you also know that is also the drawback, the curse, because a motorized machine like the Vagabond doesn't know any better. You have your plates in crooked, it's going to think it's going to take it, and like, yeah, not good. Okay, there we go. Again, just line that up, close it up. We'll emboss one of those, and then we'll start doing some inking and painting and all of those. I agree, the detail is pretty magical, and I will get to the acetate. I know it seems crazy, but I want to just, my brain only works one way. It's very compartmental, and as flexible as I am in the moment of a demo, I also still have to kind of get that done. So I'll just show you what I'm doing back here. I'm holding onto the sandwich. I'm making sure the machine grabbed it, which it did, and then I'm just replacing my hand here. Impressive, huh? Crazy. All right. Get the cobblestone, perfect. Look at this one. Ooh. Boom. See all those little bumps? And not all the rocks are bumpy. I mean, we did some, again, these are all done from photographs. So when we created these, like we wanted the most kind of organic, authentic looking thing. So, you know, you'll see some smooth rocks and some textured and some cracked ones. That's the detail in these 3D folders they're just, it's unmatched. I'm telling you, it's really, really crazy. But that's what I've always loved to do with the texture fade. I want the texture to fade in and out. I don't want it to all be the same texture on these. I do love it. Okay, let's see. I think that's a good start. If I need to emboss some other papers, I will. Now let's get back to the acetate question. We're going to do Duralar, and for that, where did I put it? It's clear. Anyone? There it is. Okay. Typically when I emboss acetate, I do like to work with acetate. Like I like to work with thinner acetate only because of how I intend to use it. But we're gonna give this Duralar a shot. I'm going to take the cracked folder. Let's find it from Halloween. There we go. And see if I can create the same kind of icy vibe with this one that I do with a thin piece of acetate. Well, no. Do you have to spray acetate? It's plastic. It won't take the water. You can spray it. Yep, and then you can squeegee it off or just wipe it off, but it won't change plastic at all. And if you have something smaller like this, kind of move it around. I think I'm going to position it right here. That'll be good. Here we go. Yeah, that works too. We could try that. If this it's just Duralar is thick because it's meant for something else, but it's the sign of a true maker, right? You put it in and you're like, oh, see how thin this is? Yeah, we'll try that. But hey, look, I'm still rocking this because it doesn't matter to me. I like to just try it and I'll say, hey, that's really good, or that didn't work at all. This seemed to emboss. Ooh, it's good. See? But now we're going to have something to compare it to. It's still embossed, but it's like, I call this meh. It's not that great, I don't think. This is going to have a huge difference just because, see, you can tell already, it's just much thinner. So can you hand me the chopper, please?
Sure.
So many different things. I love when a demo just goes awry. That's my favorite. Okay. Like any true maker, you just stack it on the pile of tools, giant blade in the air. Who cares? You just cut. Cut on your lap, doesn't matter. We're all the same as makers. We take whatever space is available. Okay, much thinner. Let's put this through. So the answer, can you emboss Duralar? Yes. Does it look good? Denied. I think it just looks kind of, I don't know, kind of like it really didn't like it. All right. Put this in. Let me square this up. All right. See, look at this already.
Ooh, that's cool.
See what I mean? So this is like, it just looks like, I don't know, ice. I love how that looks, especially if you have any baseboard windows and you place this behind a baseboard window. See how it just looks like icy glass? Beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah. So this was just a box of transparencies Mario had from, like, you know, the office supply store. Just, you want that thinner weight, especially for plastic. You're just going to get better detail. That's what I think, because this is just like, it's okay, but this is how it should look. All those little extra bumps, because that's going to catch the light in a totally different way. Okay. Absolutely cool. All right, there you go. Answered that. Let's move this aside. I'm going to come back to it because, you know, there's going to be some techniques where we need to do, you know, another embossing just to emboss and deboss color. Okay. All right, let me set this. Well, not really. Just the trimmer, thanks. Okay. You just never know with me. I start out honestly so good. Oh my gosh, look at my glass mat. That would drive me crazy.
So many belly pushers.
It is. Listen, use what you got. Use your assets. There we have it. Okay. Let's do an inky one first. So I'm going to talk again about Zoe and the bricks. It's amazing. And I'm going to tell you what I've learned, because I followed the technique until it came to the painting of the lines. And I was like, yeah, I did try that once. And I'm like, that's not happening. But there's some things that she shared, and she even shares colors. So there's different color variations. I'm not sure if I'm going to follow her recipe perfect, but I just like using different things. So I'm going to use old paper for the paint. This is what I found most fascinating. She starts out with a paint background, and I've never done that before with embossing. And I thought, well, that's not going to work. If you put paint, how are we going to ink on the top of paint? Because typically sprays don't dry. In any event, it works. And it actually gives it like an oxidized look. So bravo, Zoe. It was like, I was so happy. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love, you know, discovering things that I've not tried. It's good. So your paint color, again, when it comes to your recipe, what you choose is totally going to change the outcome of what you get. And that's going to be okay. These are all spray stains. I'm going to use some oxide spray, but I'll use that on cobblestone. Okay. So we're just going to start with a layer technique. Now, in full transparency here, when you're creating with this, can you emboss Yupo? Yes, you should try it. It's a great synthetic. Yupo heavy stock, not so much, but Yupo, yes. When you're working with this, if you follow Zoe's tutorial correctly, which I did the first time, but I don't think I can in the demo, drying time is the most critical for the outcome. Like, things need to dry before you keep doing the next step. So, but because it's just going to be easier for me in this video to show something from start to finish, I'm going to use a heat tool to speed up the process, but just kind of know that. All right, we're going to start with a little bit of distressed paint. I just happened to use old paper. And I'm going to pick up some paint. And on this one, I'm just going to do a little dry brushing. Now, if you find that your paint is a little too thick, one of the tips that she showed is just give it a little spritz of water. And again, she has a blog post with great photos and great step outs. But you just kind of want to get some paint down on the thing. You can paint the entire thing. I like the idea of having some paint and some not painted because it does impact how the ink sits. I also love using a collage medium brush because I've always been a fan of, I guess they call them like chip brushes, you know, at the hardware store, just because they create some really nice streaky effects. So see, I'm just going over, and you can see like where there's color, where there's still white, you just kind of go for it. You do what's going to work, but I'm not soaking it in paint. Yeah, crispy dry for sure. Okay, there's my painted layer. Just clean this up. And you could work on a craft mat. You could do all those, but this was really more about the texture and not so much the tutorial. So now I'm going to need to dry this. Okay. Just drying. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful. And you could use whatever paint you have. I happen to like distress paint because I love the viscosity of it. Plus I love the palette. Another thing, if you're doing some drawing, try to keep your paper off of your glass mat, especially if you work on a glass mat, even if you have a craft sheet, because anytime we're drawing something because it has moisture, right? Be that paint or ink or anything. If you lay this down and you just dry it, your moisture is actually trapped on the glass. You may not see it on camera, but next time you're in your studio, if you're crafting along, see what I mean. Lay the paper down, dry it, and move it, and you're gonna see all this moisture there. That will like double or triple the drying time of anything. So if you just hold it up, it's allowing the heat to go through the paper and it will dry in half the time. So just keep that in mind. And if you have sensitive hands to the heat and you find yourself kind of, burning yourself, get yourself a little pair of hot hands. These are little Teflon. They seem silly, but I swear, I only use them when I'm embossing, but you can hold on to that and you can even heat it. They won't melt, but that will help if you're sensitive to the touch. Yeah, some people dry from the back too. I don't tend to do that, but you absolutely could. I just dry where the medium is and let the moisture wick through the back. But if you had ink or whatever on the back, you could do that. Okay, this is what we have. It's dry to the touch, and we're going to add some color. So color, there again, you could add color in different ways. Zoe talks a lot about, adding different colors and drying them in between, and you absolutely could, and I will on some of them. So this is just some spray stain. This happens to be Rusty Hinge. Then I'm going to go in with just a little bit of some frayed burlap, not much, just to give me just some different color variations. Now, if you want the bricks to be kind of speckly, fleckly, dry it like this because you can see it's speckly. If you want the color to wick just a little bit, I'm just using a little bit of water. And you can see, because distress is reactive, how that color is completely changing. I'm not hosing it. I'm just adding a little bit of water and letting that color wick. And then we're going to start drying it. Now, because I'm drying it and I'm not using this ink, one thing that I do in between dries is I get rid of this. Because why do I want to try to dry something into a puddle of wet? There we go. So this is what I was saying, that like if I'm working in real time, I would set this aside and I would work on something else. Okay, so that is really good. So here's what I find really interesting about this technique is when this ink dries, and I will hold it up to show you, you could even see it on camera already. It looks like oxide. Like, in other words, the vibrant translucent dye that we see wet right here dries to this chalky, bricky, stony finish, which that was like my aha moment where I'm like, what in the world just happened? In fact, I even went and looked at the bottle. I'm like, did I use oxide? Nope. So that was one of those things that I'd never thought to do, and I found that to be really, really cool. So I love that, Zoe. So that's what we have so far. I'm just going to keep adding colors. Just keep adding whatever I want. I'm going to add some fired brick because, well, come on. Just add some red to that. And then I'm going to add some pumice stone because I do like pumice stone. I like that it's like kind of a murky. And this one I'm going to add, it's a little bit more splotchy. So see, I'm not actually going full mist. I'm just kind of slowly just getting some little splattering bits. At this point, anything that you want to add or edit, like if you don't want any white, you're going to need to put some color there. So my lightest color was frayed burlap, so I'll probably put a little bit up there. If I wanted something a little bit more orange, I could go back to Rusty Hinge. Here we are. But again, if I want some of that color to move just a little bit, I can add just a little bit of water. If you had a lot of color, you can move it. So let's say I want these drips to just move a little bit. I can just let gravity play in. Right? Just, again, just for imperfection. Perfect. And we're going to clean that off. And I'm using a paper towel instead of my ink towel just because I literally want to absorb the ink off of the glass. So that's why I'm choosing that. Okay, off we go to dry. All right. Same thing, just heating that up. So if you're not a fan of the drying part, well, look, if you're watching a video, you got YouTube, you got music, and you want to just make a piece from start to finish, just dry it. But if you have the time to do this in sections, it is nice to just set it aside. This, I would say, is the most crucial part of the whole thing, is this ink needs to be as dry as possible. And if you read Zoe's tutorial, she's like, dry. And then when it's dry it again. And then even after you think that's dry, just go ahead and dry it one more time because it is super important. Now this is one that, because I've added all the stain, I am going to want to turn it over and see if I have any seepage, right? Any ink that's going through those things. You might want to dry that from the back, but that really just depends on how much you hose this down. the more water or color you add, the more it's going to seep through. But isn't that wild how those colors completely transform from when we went on that with wet to how this is just dried? Like, what? How is that even happening? I think that's just so stinking cool. And there are many, many ways to do this. So don't think you have to follow any one tutorial. If you have an idea or you like the adaptation of an idea, you do what's going to work for you. Okay. So these are my colors. So you can see it's all, and just like this, you could be done. You could be like, yep, I'm good. I'm done. But it's the next step that I was like, is very cool, but it certainly hurt my head to do it. So Zoe will talk about going in with gesso and a paintbrush and painting in the grout lines. And I think that's fabulous. And if you have a steady hand, I do think that the outcome is better than what I ended up with, but I don't have that steady hand. I wish I did, but I don't. I remember back in my Ben Franklin days, I even took a toll painting class, and yeah, I dropped out of it because when the teacher comes up and says, you know what, this isn't for everybody. That was like, I remember that. We were painting strawberries and I was like, I heard you loud and clear. Because I couldn't get, even if I was holding and like tried to rest, all the tricks, it was like, nope. Like I'm steady, but as soon as I have a brush, I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like Zorro. I just want to just start flinging that thing around. Okay, let's just try it one more time. Then we're gonna go. Does the paint need to be lighter colors since the sprays are translucent? Yes. See, Lisa, you already knew the answer. Perfect. You know what you know, because that's what's going to give you, see that color coming through. So, and you could do a mix. You could do old paper, you can do frayed, you can do all sorts of things. All right. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay. Next, we're going to get into the outline, the bricks. Okay. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to utilize my folder. Again, this is the different way from going in and painting. Not the right way, the different way, but that's who we are, right? You can use whatever colors. I find that if I use a combination of, I have them both, picket fence and lost shadow, it kind of does the trick for me, okay? So here we go. I'm going to use distress paint. I'm going to use my folder. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use a mini brayer. Okay, the mini brayer is really, I think, where everything comes into play. If you don't have a mini brayer, this is a distress sprayer. This is it's just a good rubber that actually is designed to work with distress products, but you could use whatever you have. If you have a really soft brayer, just be mindful that if it's too soft, you're going to get color down into the recessed areas where we don't want it. If the brayer's too hard, you're only going to get really thin lines and it won't follow the texture. So play around with it, okay? If you have a bigger brayer, not ideal for this technique, okay? Even though you think like, oh, but this is going to cover more. I know that sounds good in your head, but honestly, the little sports car brayer is, in my opinion, the best, all right? I have 3 of these because I use them a lot. They're very easy to clean. You push out, you can take it in the sink and literally clean off the paint. But it is designed to transfer distress oxide, ink, sprays, and paints way better. Plus, it's got the little feet that you set it on, okay? So here we go. The first thing I like to do is figure out where my brick fits back into this folder because we are going to re-emboss it, okay? But once I figure out which way it fits, and I mean that because of orientation, because you might think like, oh, that's how it works. You need to line this up exactly where you had it the first time. But I don't keep it there because I'm going to be brayering paint and I don't want to risk brayering paint over this. So once I have it lined up, I just slide it down. So I know when I'm ready, all I need to do is like pop it up to the seam and go for it. Does that make sense? You're going to see like I have to kind of work quick because the paint is drying as we speak. So I've got my machine off to the side. I'll be able to grab it as quick as possible. But in a perfect world, your machine would be literally right next to you because you want to work quick for this when you're doing it. All right, I'm going to shakety shake. I'm going to start with a little picket fence. It doesn't really matter, I don't think, which color you want to start with. And you could even just use one if you want to. I'm going to take the brayer and I'm just going to start rolling through. Now, when I'm using the brayer, I'm just going to move this around. You can spread this out with your finger as well, but you want to be very light-handed so your brayer can actually roll through the paint, whether you're on glass or a craft mat or any kind of parchment. If you're pushing, all your brayer's doing is slipping and sliding and you're creating a bar. Do you see that? Like you don't see the roller moving. You need to be light-handed so the roller moves. And you want to get a generous amount of paint, but you don't need the whole entire puddle on there. Okay, we ready to go? So this is moved down. Here's my folder. On your mark, get set. Here we go. Next, I'm just going to start brayering this right onto the folder, and I'm doing it on the raised lines of Brickwork. And we're doing this in many, many layers. It's not a one and done thing. So once I go this direction, and I'm really light-handed, you can see like I don't even really have my index finger pressing down on a brayer like we would on paper. Then I'm just going to hold the brayer as light as possible and go in different directions. This is a 3D folder. The plastic is going all different angles and different directions. So you're going to catch different high points different ways. And those big splots, that's part of the folder. So don't think, oh, I pressed too hard there. No, that's part of the design. But when you go into these angles, you can start seeing like, oh, I don't have any paint there. So now just move your brayer in a different angle to where you get some paint in there. But the idea is you want to keep wet paint going. If you go over it a million times without reloading the brayer, then all you're doing is essentially drying your paint on your folder. Not what we want to do. Okay, so once you either think you have enough or you're out of paint, do not reload your paint on the craft sheet. You're on your glass mat. You don't have time. Okay, set that down on the feet. We're going to position this where it needs to go, which is locked up in that first position. Make sure my paper is being held. And then when I fold it, I kind of bend the folder so it catches the top of that first, then layer that down. It's in. Now I get my machine, bring it in there, do what I do. Thanks, Mario. He's like at the ready handing me the machine. And then I'm just going to run this through. Oh, let me get the bump. There we go. Perfect. And we're just going to do a single pass. Okay. Set that down. And that's our first layer. So you can see already that we've got that white going in. Here's the thing though. The white is going to, as it's drying, it's going to start soaking up the color. It's going to start soaking up that ink. So what you can do is if you just dry it really quick, it gives it less soaking opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Like the longer this stays wet, the more it's going to absorb that ink that it's on. But it just gives a little bit. Okay, perfect. That's one layer. We're going to do this again. So let me just put this back, kind of reset. It's all the things we need to do. Okay. I got that. Yep. Is that where it goes? Yes. So now I'm just going to move this down and now I'm going to brayer. So you can keep going with white. We can add lost shadow. The reason I use both is because again, I like the grout to just be a little weird, if you will. I don't want it to be totally white. I don't necessarily need it to be totally gray, but lost shadow is super pale. So I like that. I do. All right. So same rules apply. I'm just going to see it again. So I'm just picking up some paint and I'm just rolling it on. And if you get too much paint, like right there, I think I got too much paint. I don't care. They're bricks. So a couple of things that can go wrong. Too heavy-handed. You're not loading up the brayer. You're just kind of dragging it so you don't even have enough paint. And also you're not like going in different directions. I mean, that's what's really important about this tiny little brayer is it does give you a lot more creative freedom to hit the different angles of the embossing folder. So we started with picket fence. Now we did a little lost shadow and then we will finish with picket fence as well. So I kind of like, why do I do it this way? Do not know. Not to make it complicated, I just like the effect. Okay, place that down. Good deal. Hold it in place. Grab the folder, close it. Thanks, Mario. That, cutting pad, machine, running it through. Because we don't want the paint to dry. We want the paint to actually transfer. That's all it's doing. So single pass. So now you can see why it really didn't matter, you know, when we were working on this. There we go. If you let that paint dry, then that's not going to be good. There we go. So now we're getting kind of a cool brickish grime. Same. But this isn't nearly as defined, so I do encourage you to go check out Zoe's post because her bricks are much more defined. Obviously, she's, you know, painting through all the areas because, you know, you'll see with the paint, it doesn't hit every aspect. But that doesn't mean that you can't, you know, modify ideas. That's what it's all about. There's our second layer getting really cool. So I'm gonna do one more layer, and this just happens to, just gonna use white. Just gonna go back to picket fence. I don't care that I have some lost shadow there. It can mix and match. There we go. Perfect, and off we go. And I'm gonna show you some different things because it doesn't always have to be paint. Again, if you haven't watched a video on embossing folders, I encourage you to watch a video because you'll learn a lot more than just this one, because we are going to use archival on one. You can use ink in a folder. Doesn't always have to be paint. There's a lot of different things that you can use and work with. All right. And when you're doing yours, play with whatever colors that come to your mind. If you're like, I'd like to use purple, well, guess what? Use purple. If I like to use black, use black. But try different mediums, because different mediums are going to do different things. I think what I like about paint is it is a bit messier, and I think it lends itself really well to this particular texture, this design. You know, some I want a little cleaner, like you'll see when we do numbered. I like to use ink because I want the definition around the numbers to be much crisper, right? Much cleaner. Okay. There we go. Okay. Place this down. Perfect. All right, closing that up. Create the sandwich. Again, position that. And there we go. Thanks. Put that in and give it one more pass. Perfect. Do. There we go. Thank you. And open that up. Bye-bye. Look at that. I just think that like that third one is just, it's a pop. It's a pop star. Wow. Okay. I'm almost done. I want to do a couple other little elements to it, and you could stop at any point. I mean, that's the whole point of this, the demo, is look at something and you can stop whenever you want to stop. But why am I drying it? Because the longer the paint sits wet, the more it can absorb the ink that it's sitting on. And yes, I've tried microglaze first. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. Besides it changes the whole cool finish that you achieve with the paint. It doesn't seal like you think it would when the wet paint is sitting on it. It still pulls up some color. I just found that heating it is the best result. Okay, that's what we have. So I'm not done with it, but I do want to talk about cleanup, because some people just kind of freak about, you know, not wanting to use a brayer, not wanting to use a machine or whatever because there's paint involved. I always say the only waste is not actually using the products that you have, okay? So I'm just gonna clean this up with a paper towel. You could put something else through it if you had other papers, but it's just gonna clean up with water, okay? So let me just get that paint off first. That works. The brayer, I'm just going to grab the brayer. Again, these arms just bend out, remove it from the pin, and this is just going to go right into water so it can go into the sink, and this will just clean right off. So I'm going to hand that off to Mario. Thanks. Just give it a quick rinse if you don't mind. And then we'll talk about paint. And paint is going to be the same thing that applies to ink, all right? So when we get to ink, it's already going to be asked and answered. To clean a medium off of my folder, whether I'm using acrylic paint or if I'm using archival ink, I like to clean it with sanitizer. The reason I clean it with hand sanitizer is hand sanitizer will remove permanent ink, archival, paint, gesso, even if it's dried. So let's say you didn't have access to the sink and this started to dry. I don't recommend leaving it to dry, meaning if you're done with this, go and clean it. But if some of the paint is already dried on there, sanitizer will reactivate that paint and eat through it, okay? And it won't damage your folder at all. So just take some sanitizer. Thanks, Mario. See, it just cleans right up. And that holds true if you happen to get paint or collage media, even on paintbrushes. Like hand sanitizer will just clean up that medium so fast. So now I'm just using a paper towel. You can use anything. You can use a microfiber cloth, the scrubby, whatever you want to use. But can you see how just the sanitizer is just eating through that paint? So easy. I'm going to keep working on it. Thanks. Little sanitizer there. I'm going to put a little sanitizer on the end. And again, you just clean that up. And then I'm going to rinse it off. So I'm going to hand this off to Mario. He can just give it a quick rinse, because that's what you want to do. Not that the sanitizer is going to damage anything, but you want to give it a rinse. I don't ever expect my folders to be totally perfect again. It's not going to hurt. So is your sanitizer have glycerin? It's just hand sanitizer from the store. So I don't add anything to it. So there we go. Hand you that. Thanks. And then when he brings it back, I'll show you the final step in cleaning. Now this is just regular sanitizer, you know, like in the big gallon. Yeah, vegetable brush, toothbrush, any of those things. But there again, even if paint is dry on a brush, hand sanitizer will totally dissolve the paint and get your brush back to brand new. So good. Okay. All righty. So once it's rinsed off, what I like to, you can let them air dry. That's absolutely fine. But I just take a paper towel, and what I'll do is I'll dry off the outside. Thanks.
Sure.
Just give it a wipe on the outside. You're still going to have some water in there when you rinse it off. Okay. Then I'm just going to lay a single paper towel in there, because not only is this going to dry it, but it's also any little excess that's like sitting, you know, down in the well of, like, I'll just say wet paint or ink. Again, this applies the same way. A single ply of paper towel, we're just going to run it through. Well, besides, you're going to have a really cool paper towel in a second. It does just grab any of that last stuff that's in there. Okay. So like I said, besides that, you're going to have a really cool paper towel, which you will. You could sure use it for something. It just takes out any little, you don't notice it if it was white paint, but if it was any kind of ink, it just takes it out of the groove, and your folder is back to new. So that's it. So likely, if I'm doing this, I would be doing a lot. You know, I'd be doing a lot of elements. I would be, you know, if I had bricks, I would be inking several brick pages, and then I would do the white embossing on all of the sheets at one time. You know, again, compartmental. I do the whole idea when it comes to that. And then your folder is totally dry and ready to go. Okay. So some ways that we can, this already looks great, but if we want to kind of give it a little bit more personality, there's things, as always, as makers, we could take to the nth degree. We can take a little bit of paint. I'll use some black this time. I'm going to use a splatter brush. I have a splat box right here. So this is a distress splatter brush. This is just used by pulling the bristles from the midsection, pointing it at what you want, and then you're going to slowly let them go, and see those little kind of spaghetti strands. They just splatter the paint. But if you have your own splattering technique, I've seen Pete do it with a palette knife. I've seen people use a toothbrush. I've seen people use like a twisty brush. Again, use whatever you like. This is my tool of choice because I find that I can just get different kind of splatters. I just added a little bit of water to this paint because I want my splatters to not be as wet as like a spray ink, but not be as thick as acrylic paint. Kind of in between. So like a little spritz of water. And then all you do to load up the brush is you like sweep through it. So this isn't a dip. This isn't a swirl. It's just like a back and forth sweep. So see, the paint is just on the tips. And then I'm just going to grab this. Let me see where I can see in the camera. And I'm just going to get pretty close and just kind of let it go. So it allows you, again, I'm pulling here and I'm just gently doing it. I'm not arcing it back like a bow, right? We're not Robin Hood or anything. You're just adding some little splatters wherever you want, and change your angle, change your hand position. There's a lot of paint on there that you would never think is there. Just keep going. This is, I think most people, when they do this, they get too much on. And now I'm going to flip the brush over and I'm just going to splatter in the opposite direction because I'm sure there's still medium on there. So that's from the same little sweep. And I'll show you what we have. So all those little black speckly flecklies, I love some of the big ones. Now I want to create a few more big ones because after all, this is a grungy wall. So I'm gonna load up. This time I'm gonna go a little quicker. Just kind of give it a quick. That just adds bigger splats. So if you're like quick on the pull and the release, it creates just some bigger ones. But again, do what works for you. There you have it. And then we're going to let this dry, or in our case, we already know we're going to dry it with a heat tool. So that might be one of those things. And this just, I'll clean in water. I just have a jar of water. I just put that in. And that might be something where you're like, I am not doing that, but I love it. So this could be splatter that you add black or white or whatever. I'm just going to clean up that paint. See, you try to start with just the smallest little drop and there you have it. And when I show you numbered and I show you cobblestone, it's just different. These are all different techniques. That's why I wanted to demo them, because there is no right or wrong way to alter it. But my gosh, seeing a paper transform before your eyes, I think is pretty amazing that you can see it. All right, so same rules apply. I'm gonna go in. Now splatters take the longest to dry because you really are just adding little drips on the top. I think that to me is like what you don't understand is you're adding like literally drops of paint. So they're little blobs. You need to dry them. And if some of them smear, not the end of the world, but this is the step that honestly I would just set aside to dry. But I'm going to speed it up just for the sake of the live. Okay. And it's really one final step. And honestly, you could have done the other step first and then splattered if you didn't want to dry. There is no like, oh, could I have, because we're going to add crayon. You could say, oh, could I add crayon and then splatter? Or you could say, oh, could I have splattered and then done the white emboss? Yes, you could really, you can switch up whatever order is. But I just think, see, those little splatters, to me, it really changes, just gives it more character. Okay, final step are crayons. And again, Zoe's blog, it was just a really great idea. This is where you can go in and just kind of give a brick a different color, a different tone. Distress crayons, you're just going to use on your finger because see, they have kind of viscosity of like a lipstick and you can just smudge right over the top. So I'll show you. I'll just do a couple and then I'll show you. Just like, because right now this color is fired brick. So I'm not necessarily doing fired brick over fired brick. You could, but I'm doing fired brick over wherever my finger lands. How about that? So there's fired brick, fired brick, fired brick, fired brick, fired brick, fired brick, fired brick. So, you know, you don't have to isolate it. Your finger is going to be perfect and it will hit the brick perfect. And because crayon has a different viscosity, it sits right on the top. So it still allows me to see the ink underneath, the paint underneath that. That's why I'm not coloring the whole thing, because I just want to give it just a tone or a shade. And again, this is a technique that you can do with any folder. It doesn't have to be bricks. You could say, oh, I want my cobblestones to kind of have a little moss on the top. Well, great. Use something mossy. If you're going to switch colors, I recommend cleaning the tool. That would be a little bit of water. Take that, clean that off because it's reacted with water. It will come right off. So that's why we want to start with just kind of a clean finger. Maybe I want to do a little bit of pumice stone. Maybe I want something kind of gray. And again, you're just smearing it on your finger and you just really just swiping it right on there. And when I'm doing that, I am using a little bit of force. Like I'm not just lightly doing it. I'm almost kind of doing like a flick because you want that crayon to come off. I do anyway, like in a pretty heavy way, just to add color to those blocks. So again, you can see like where the pumice stone is, not to be confused with this splatter here that is scorched timber. Pretty cool though. I love the effect. To me, it's a fun way. It's a fun way to do it. You do need to clean the tools though. You know, you get so excited like for the next color and you're like, I don't know what color this is. Is this red? Or it becomes a color of muck, and maybe in the brick world, it actually worked great. And you can layer crayon on top of crayon. That's what I also like. So now I'm finishing up with some rusty hinge, which I really love the color of that. You can just add it. Could you go direct with the crayon? Absolutely. If you were light-handed enough and you wanted to just do like a little skippity bit, go for it. But there we have it. And like you see, clearly we could go for days on this. The bricks, you could definitely do dark. I mean, you saw from the makes from, you know, Tammy B and Stacy, like you can add a darker color in there if you wanted to, but I love that. I love that effect, that look. So that's brickwork. Let's play on another one. So far, so good. So thanks again, Zoe Hillman, for that cool inspiration. It was fascinating to just go and watch and look, and yeah, loved it. All right. Next up, let's do cobblestone, and then we'll finish up with numbered because numbered is going to go pretty quick. So this one, again, you could do whatever. You can create whatever elements you want. Yes, watercolor cardstock for the base. That's what I started with. Just the most, again, like I said, it's the most robust paper in the line to really kind of get wet and dry over and over. This one, we could do the paint thing again if you wanted to have some of those more chalkier looks. In fact, let's do that. You don't have to, but I'm going to see. I don't think I did. I'm not going to do this one. I think I'll do that on numbered. But this one, I'm just going to go straight with the paper. So for this, let's take some colors. I've got a little bit of, I got some Lost Shadow. I've got some old paper. What do I got here? Ooh, a little bundled sage and a little old paper oxide sprays. Let's incorporate those. We're going to go stony. So we're going to go pumice stone because I'm going to make this look a little bit more rock-ish. Do I have hickory smoke? I do. Okay, so here you can see my colors are gray, 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 and green, gray sludge. You do you. But that's pretty, like my palette is it's very limited. Use what you want, okay? You can start wet or you can start dry. If you start wet, your colors are going to blend more. If you start dry, your colors will be more speckly. And because it's stone, I'm going to go with just dry paper because I want the colors to be a little speckly. I start with old paper. I do love old paper. It's one of my favorite distress colors, one of the OGs, the originals. Then I'm going to add a little bit of Lost Shadow. Lost Shadow is the lightest gray. It's going to make for a great blend. Then I'm going to do a little pumice stone. Pumice stone, I'm going for more of the splattery because it's dark and I want my rocks to have a little bit of splatter. And then I'm going to dry it. Before I add some hickory smoke, I'm going to dry it. Okay? Could use watercolor pencils. You could use whatever you want. If you want to use watercolor pencils and go and color each rock, you can use watercolor pencils, inks, mini inks. I'll even add some inks on this one. We'll go in with some mini inks and oxide. So absolutely. Use what you want to play around with. It's just different mediums do different things. So like if you're trying to highlight those bricks with a watercolor pencil, you can't really color your finger with a watercolor pencil unless you dip it. Then you could. And then you can swipe over it. It's just going to be a little wetter, but absolutely. I see a question, and I know you already know the answer to that, Arlene. If you don't have sprays, can you use pads? Yes. It's just you would be applying it a different way, either with a brush or dipping it. I mean, you have the technology. You can squish your ink pads and do all that. It's just getting the color into these areas. You need it to be fluid. So this you would probably want to blend with an ink pad and then spray it with water to get that color to move. So absolutely use what you have. That's what's going to be, that's what I think makes the creative challenge so fun. All right, so for this one, I'm going to add hickory smoke, which is going to be a dark gray, but I already want it to blend. So I'm going to add a little bit of water, just to some areas. And you'll see now when I add this, that when I add the color, you see how that color just kind of fades in already? I think that's just, that to me is the magic of it. And then I'm going to add some oxide. Now for the oxide, you do need to shake these because oxide is a fusion of dye and pigment. I have bundled sage and old paper. They're very similar in the fact that they kind of dry, look at that, like this light green, a light explosion out of the top of that. They dry to kind of a funky green. It's probably because I haven't been spraying these because I'm not going to use it as a spray. That's probably why the sprayer is like, use me. When I do this, I actually shake it up and I open this, and now I'm going to use the little tube, the little schnozzle, and I'm splattering this right from the tube. I'm splattering this. This one happens to be bundled sage to get a little green in there. And then I'm going to do old paper because I'm not really using it as a colorant. I'm using it almost as like a moss or a mold. You'll see what it ultimately looks like. Old paper, I'm telling you, when you use it, you're going to think these are the same colors, but they dry with a different shade. So I do love that. Okay. And now we're just going to dry it. So this was the question that was asked earlier about, do you typically emboss the paper first and then color, or can you color and then emboss? I'm going to show you in a second why I prefer to emboss and then color, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it the other way. It really doesn't. It's completely up to you when you're doing it. The significance, in my opinion, about doing the embossing first is even though we've wet the paper first, it kind of breaks some of the pieces up. So you can see around these rocks, see how it's getting like these dark edges? That's from the embossed paper kind of breaking. And when it breaks, the ink seems to permeate that area a little bit more. So that's why I like to do that. I just think that, see right there, it doesn't happen on every single piece, but I like that the ink kind of grabs into the texture a little more. So that would be probably a good answer to your question. If you want your background to be more uniform in color, even if you're doing ink blending, then my advice would be to color first and then emboss. This way you don't have to worry about, you know, that ink soaking in any weird way. I hope that makes sense. All right. So right now, this is kind of our background. I'm feeling it. I'm liking it, but I do want to go in with just a little bit. I want to add a little bit more, not much brown, but this is going to be frayed burlap. I want this to also be a little blended. So now I'm going to add some water just in some areas. And then I'm going to take frayed burlap, because frayed burlap is like a grayish brown, but you'll see it's going to add, it has some great tones to it. I like that. Just get a few little splatters. There we go. Flick that off. You get what you get. Okay. And I think the reason I like to show this in this kind of demo is that there's no right or wrong way to do it. In fact, you see I've got some great color there. I'd love some of that color to come in this area. Instead of adding more, I'm just going to add some water and just see, like, let it trail down. See that? And I can do the same thing from this end. Just move some of that so it'll follow that pattern. Nice. All right, let's dry it, but I need to also dry the surface. Moss and mold. Yeah, it does. It looks mossy. And we can, any of these things, you know, and I hope that that's what the demos prove to you, that if you don't have sprays, use ink pads. If you don't have ink pad, but I'm using the medium of choice for simplicity, not for promotion. Just always remember that when you see a demo. I'm showing you the product that I would choose to use because I think it's the right product for the technique, not because, ooh, I want to promote sprays. But it doesn't mean that if you don't have it, you can't try with what you have. It's just, there are challenges. Again, if you were doing this with an ink pad, it's going to be a lot to get this look. Like getting an ink pad to kind of do this and drip and move all that is challenging. Just as challenging as if I said, oh, I want you to create a soft blended background and you only have spray. You're like, ooh, that's a bit challenging. Okay, so I think that's the part that is really important. Okay, beautiful. Just drying. Now this one, we're not going to go in and add any paint. So as far as the crispy dry is not as important as it was for Brickwork, but keep in mind, if you can dry it or let it dry, do. Okay, so now I'm going to hold this up and show you where we're at before we move on to the next step. I know, it's freaking cool, isn't it? It's amazing to see it right before your eyes. Just using, you saw my palette was just a bunch of sludge. But here's what's interesting is using the inks are giving me more of a saturation of color. See, that's where like you can see old paper or lost shadow or hickory smoke and frayed burlap. It gives me more of those concentration of colors. All this little kind of oxidized goodness is the oxide spray. So the oxide just kind of gives me, I think, more of a mossy look, and we'll add crayon as well. But that's why I like splattered it. You might say, well, could I do all the stone in oxide? Sure. It's just going to all have that kind of creamy chalk look, but that could also be really amazing. So never let your supplies hold you back from trying it. If you have the inspiration and you have something, try it. You might discover something even more magical than what you saw. Okay? It's just, you got to get over that fear factor. Less talky, more makey, right? Because so many times we sit there and go, I don't know, could I, should I, would I? Instead, you should be like doing it, because I think you'll also give yourself that creative freedom to not be afraid of making mistakes. All right, so right now, magic. I love the way it looks. I think it's great, but I want to add definition in the stone. Could we do paint? Of course we can. We did it in the last one. We have the technology, but will we? No, we're going to use something else. We're going to use ink pads. Now for this one, when it comes to ink pads, I prefer archival over using a distress ink or distress oxide. Could you do it with distress ink and oxide? Yes. Will it give you the same effect? No. Will it give you some effect? Yes. I prefer archival because it is oil-based, which means it's going to stay wet longer on plastic than, say, StazOn or VersaFine, because those inks will dry very quick and they won't transfer. I also like the fact that it is a distress palette in distress archival, so I can still stay within my palette if I'm using it. It also seems to transfer the best with more detail because it's oil-based. When I've tried this with distress ink and oxide and I put that in, it tends to wick on contact even if the paper is dry. So I just like archival for definition, transfer, and opacity. Plus, if I decide later after I deboss the color that I want to wet it or ink it, this is permanent and waterproof. So it won't wet my grout lines, if you will. Okay, now you know all the reasons for my choice. Not that anyone asked, but just in case. So we're gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna figure out where my paper lines up because I still wanna work as quick as possible. Move it down so I know. And then use whatever colors you want. If you want your grout to be the same color, use the same color. If you want it different, use different. I'm gonna use multiple ink pads, and so to avoid contamination, I'm going to work light to dark, okay? So I'm gonna add a little bit. This is the archival 4-pack, so I'm just gonna use, a little bit of gray first. That's hickory smoke, and I'm literally pushing and kind of sliding it across, okay? Direct from the pad, because we need enough ink. Then I'm gonna go in with some vintage photo. Now, hickory smoke is lighter than vintage photo, so that gray cannot contaminate this brown going direct to paper. That's why I'm not worrying about it. If I went the other way, yes, you would get brown in your gray. Now I can do a little dark, so now I'm gonna use a little espresso just in a couple areas. I don't want everything to be the same. And then I'll go to black soot. Do you have to use all? No, you could do one color. Okay, and black I think is gonna give me the most definition, so I just wanna make sure that I'm just lightly skippity-bitting over the whole thing. There we go. We have our inks. Da-da-da. We put our paper in the folder, make sure it's kind of locked in that same spot. Pick that up, give it a little bend so it can grab the paper and kind of walk your hand back out. Or you can close it on your hand like I did yesterday. And then you just have a nice little inked tattoo on your hand. There we go. So for this, just gonna run it through. That's just gonna transfer. It's gonna transfer that ink. Could you run it through 2 times? Of course, you can do whatever you wanna do. But one seems to be perfect, okay? Look at that. Just look at the definition. See,
Man,
it's like,
that is so cool.
it's just wild how it does that, right? It's just, I don't know, it's amazing to me. So now I want more color. So now I'm gonna add more ink. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. Now my ink is transferred, so I'm not gonna worry. But if you are worried, right? If you're like, well, I don't really know what's going on, just wipe that off, okay? Dry cloth is gonna take off any residual sludge so you can do your inks again. You don't have to clean it this time. You can just go for it. All right, so same thing. You're gonna move this down. All right. It does make a big difference. It just kind of, I don't know, it like outlines everything. It just gives it a cool effect. All right, I'm gonna put in some brown. And now I'm being a little bit more, just gonna say kind of heavy-handed with the ink because I wanna add just some more definition. This is actually a folder that I'm not bothered if for whatever reason I get some ink down into the stone. It's just gonna actually make the stone look even better if that's possible. But same thing, light to dark, okay? And then when you get to black, just keep that in mind that, you know, if you use too much black, it will overpower all the other colors that you used. Not that that's a bad thing, it's just probably not gonna be what you want. Okay, same thing, slide that, lock it into place. Pick this up, give it a little bend to kind of grip the paper and just walk your hand back because we don't want our paper to move. If your paper moves and you try to emboss it again, it will fool the eye. It looks really blurry. It's kind of just a bit of a hot mess. So again, we've got our platform, our extended cutting pads. I hope if anything that this demo just encourages you to get out your embossing folders and just play. Even if you have no idea what you're gonna do with them, having a pile of already made cool backgrounds, again, compartmental making for the win. I'm gonna run this through a second time because this will also help with any residual ink. Not gonna hurt it at all. This is also what I think is pretty cool about like having the Bigshot. All right, look at that. Kick that crooked, okay. Oh, see? When you think it can't get any better, you just do it again. I mean, look, in the world of mixed media, the saying is, you're only as good as your next layer, right? And nobody knows what that is. So at any point when you stop, you're amazing. But when you do the next thing, you're even more amazing. That's the thing to remember. You are. So how cool is that? Amazing. I love it. So How do we clean this? Well, we already know. Sanitizer, rinse it off, same. I'm going to leave it on there because it doesn't really matter. Sanitizer will take it off at any time. Okay, so now I'll compare this to this so we can talk about the differences here. Now, do we understand the difference just in color? Obviously, this was a mixture of different colors that I embossed just, what was it, 3 times? This was only using black, and I inked it probably 4 times, like really just loaded it up with black, because you can see how the black even debossed into the stone. So when I was doing this one, like I was taking that pad and like twisting it and dragging it and like loading it up with black because I wanted strong definition. But do you see how it looks great either way? And same rules, if I wanted this to be like brown in there, I would have just done the same thing with brown. Okay, so you can get as much color in there as you want. It's just how many times you want to apply it and how heavily do you want to apply it. This is a beautiful finish. This is just the paper. This is shiny because it has a layer of resist spray over the top. So all you would do if you wanted, I'm going to leave this one because I like it the way it is, but if you wanted it shiny, you would just lay this down, probably put it, in a splat box, give it a spray of resist spray and let it dry. And think of it as like, resist spray is almost like a liquid glossy accents. Honestly, it's a very high shiny varnish that works as a resist, but it makes a great finishing spray. Okay, it also makes a great glue for glitter if you were using it that way. So 2 different looks with Cobblestone, but that's just to show you don't always have to do the same way. But I do love resist spray for those shiny rocks. But because I want options, I like this one too. But you see, by being imperfect with your sprays, so much better. So much better. Okay, now let's get into numbered. So this one, to create something kind of woodsy, like I'll just say, talk about like this wood letterpress. There's a lot of things that you can do. It's kind of like everything just now it's time to take out all the stops and just go for it. Okay, I'm going to use some paint. There we go. This one happens to be a little frayed burlap. Kind of squeeze some paint out. I'm also going to mix that with a little bit of old paper, because honestly, guys, if you don't have old paper, is resist spray similar to resin? Not even close. No, it's a water-based kind of shiny thing. Resin is, no resin properties, but it looks like it because it's shiny. I like to mix old paper if you're going for like some cool grunge colors. I don't know what it does. It's different than white. It just adds kind of a different vibe. All right. So I'm just taking some of that paint, and first I'm just going to dry brush because I want to get almost like a sanded kind of wood, because letterpress for this one, I want it to have kind of a wood grain vibe, if that makes any sense. All right. Then I'm just going to take some old paper just by itself, and I'm just going to pick up some of that, and then I'm just going to hit a couple of things. I don't want to hit a bunch of them, but it's just going to create, I just think, a different look for the color. Chances are it's going to go over most of the high ones. You see, like, you can already tell which numbers are like more raised. So there we go. All right, done with that, done with the paint, going to dry it. Do you have to do the paint? Not at all. It's just that the paint will give it just a different look. But then I'm going to show you like how microglaze even changes the look, like what we would have got from brick. So the other thing about using a glass mat or a craft mat in general is, and you can see from just this demo, if you just get in the habit of cleaning up after yourself while you're doing it, it takes you seconds and you don't have to work in your own mess. Some people like that. Some people just love just creating a big pile of mess, and that is perfectly okay. So if that's you, celebrate the heck out of you. You're like, no, I just like to work in total chaos. Perfect. All right, just going to dry this. But yeah, I'm a clean as I go. I like it messy, but at the same time, I just can't work in the mess. Probably that's just, I would say that I'm like that probably from all of my years of demoing, at trade shows, where you're always thinking about, what is somebody going to think when they walk up to your demo table? Are they going to be like, man, what a slob? That's probably why I always wanted it to look professional. But I think that carried over into just me. So I went with a paper towel and just wiped off any excess paint because I dried majority of it. But then I saw, there was some kind of big blobs of paint, beat it up, and I'm not going to sit here and dry it for days. So paper towel took care of it. There you have it. Okay. I agree though. I saw people, a lot of you are cleaning up and some say, even though you clean, it's chaos. Outside of my glass mat, if I panned out and saw, it is chaos, but it's something about a glass mat. Even when I launch this, it's like my safe space. So everything else just like it pushes out. I got crayons over there. I got these little hands. I've got the acetate. I got a brayer over here, a disassembled brayer here, water, brushes, sprays, tipped over paints. But in my space, it is nice. So that's what it is. Okay. So this one, we're just going to add some different colors. So I'm going to go more wood. Let's use brush corduroy and gathered twigs. Those are going to be some good colors. Again, why am I using sprays? Just to give a bigger foundation. I'm going to use ink on this one as well, but I just want to get like more of that color down quicker. Okay. So gathered twigs is a little darker than vintage photo. Brush corduroy is just more of a yellow brown, kind of almost like a honey brown. I like that. And then we're going to add some water. You can see how that kind of turns into that honey brown I was telling you about. It's kind of yellowy. It's nice. There we go. That's just going to blend the colors. Let's dry it up. And so as I'm drying this, I'm just going to kind of let this move. So why do we add the paint? Well, the paint is going to allow the ink to absorb differently than unpainted paper. So where there is no paint, that stain is going to soak in. Where there is paint, the numbers are going to appear, well, lighter. So you can see that paint on there. So do you have to do it? No, but I want to show you just different ways to use your stuff. Okay. And we're going to dry this. Now, once I got this stuff to start drying, I'm going to go and sop it up. Okay. just clean that up when you can. All right, now let's finish that. Finish drying. Perfect. So you can see all those like little skippity bits of the brush. So if you didn't like that, if you're like, no, I want everything to be more uniform, well, skip the paint, right? Just skip that step. Okay. So don't be afraid to edit. When I dry everything, that's one of the things I also look at. If something's just not drying like everything else, I'll just blot it off just because probably that's where the ink built up. But then you often end up with cool little imperfections. And that to me that's the serendipitous, the whole happy accident of what you can achieve on a background. Okay. So far, so good. Another thing to remember about layering is most of the time art has to go through a lot of ugly before you see anything good. We can all agree with that as makers. Like, you start out and there are many times you just want to call it. We talked about that in class on Sunday. There's a lot of parts of a process where you're like, this is disgusting. And it's like, yep, it may be, but keep going a little bit. Don't spend, all your time trying to fix it. But there are times that like, don't give up on it. See it through and then you still may not like it and that's okay. But don't give up so quick. All right, let me get some colors out. I'm going to work with inks and oxide. So I got some minis. I think for the most part, I want to do brown, but I also want to do, I'm just looking here for some, there we go. That's the tin I want. I want like a little rusty hinge and some wild honey. So here I've got my minis of ink and oxide. You can, again, use what you have. I'm going to lock those together so I can work from there. You can work with a blending brush. So if you want to add color in the debossed areas, I would recommend a brush. If you want color more on the top like I do, I would suggest using a tiny blend tool. And I'm proud to announce that I have both of my racks finished. If you saw the original video, I only had one because I was waiting for the tools, and now I have one for oxides and one for inks on the minis, and I use them. It's so crazy. Like, I use a lot of ink, but I use this so much more because it's just ready. It's done. It's good to go. Okay. So I'm just going to pick, I think I'm going to start with just something kind of warm. So I'm going to go with some ink. I'm going to do a little rusty hinge, and I'm just going to, I like to just load up some ink and I'm good with it, especially on something like this, because I am just going more with some color. and I'm just going to put this color wherever I want it to go. Doesn't mean I can't go back to it. Of course I can, but in this instance, so these are my inks, so I'm doing that first. Does it matter ink or oxide? No, not at all. It doesn't matter if you want to use one or the other or both or which one you start with. So this one's a little vintage photo. And again, just going in, adding some color. It's the same brown. So I have many different shades of brown. I have like light brown, like frayed burlap, warm brown, and then cool brown. So warm is going to be like gathered, brushed, vintage. Cool brown is going to be walnut, scorched, ground espresso. So just those things. And this is where, I mean, you can see I'm just using that tool to really hit those numbers to add some more color, because that's ultimately the look I'm going for. I'm going to add some walnut stain as well. Could you go direct to paper? Sure, you could do that too. In fact, we're going to do some of that when we add some archival. Okay, this is a little bit of walnut stain. I just like what this does. I think it just gives it more of a, I guess, a realistic wood look, I suppose. All right, then I'm going to take some ground espresso oxide. Now I've got my oxide tools over here. If you only had one, you could clean it. But I like the fact that I don't have to stop anymore to clean them. I think in the world of tools as makers, we know that. We're kind of inundated with this tool and this gadget and this way and this hack and this game changer. At the end of the day, you should invest in what you're actually going to use. That's what I've learned, is there's a lot of things that I've bought over the years that I liked. And look, at the time, it was a great thing. But, you know, the more you make or the less you make, you know, the less time you have to make, you know that your making time is a little bit more critical. Like you have to be like on it a little bit more. I'm going to go back to some rusty hinge. A little bit more efficient. So it's like, okay, what do I use? And I find what's weird is like, I don't use the regulation size blending tools hardly at all, unless I just happen to want to blend a big giant background. Most of the time I'm just like this, adding color or adding something to a die cut or something like that. So like tiny tools for the win. And they don't take up like really any space. It's just good. All right. How are we doing, Mario? Okay.
Doing great.
I just haven't shut up. I'm like having so much fun.
That's good.
I love it. Okay. Just going to go a little hickory smoke just because. Okay. What storage is used for the mini blenders? For this or this? This, I got this at Simon Says Stamp. It's just like it's an acrylic holder. It probably was once a lipstick rack, but to me it's like the perfect size because see, it's the same height as the tiny tools. It's kind of rounded and I love it. So that's where I found it. I'm not sure what it was ultimately for, but that's what I use it for. And to me, it is perfect because, you know, I've had acrylic holders where it like, you know, covers 50% of the tool, and these little fingers don't seem to grab that. Ooh, see, look at that. That hickory smoke, I think, really added kind of that. You could see where I put it. I want some there. Adds just a little bit of a shadow. So that's really good. Tea dye warm and cool. Okay, I'm going to quiz you to see if you can answer it yourself. Tea dye warm and cool. Does tea dye look more orange and yellow, or does it look more green and blue? I will wait for the answer because I like that. So I'll wait for Nicola to say, is tea dye more orange and yellow or more green and blue? Let's see what your eye sees, because everyone does see stuff different, but you know, when you kind of identify it, then you'll really get it. Okay. Good with those inks. I'm waiting. I see it. There you go. Because this helps, because, you know, like when I first started, I'm like, I had no idea like what people were even talking when they said warm and cool. I'm like, does it feel different? Like, does it give you a different temperature sensation? What are you talking about? All right. See a lot of people showing up. Okay. Well, the majority of you are saying it, and that is correct. If something has more of that yellow-orange color, you just remember yellow-orange is the color of the sun. The sun is warm. It's a warm color. So it really has to do with kind of the tones that it gives off. If it's like, so you can see in this background, there's warm and then there's cool. And even if I use some cool browns like walnut stain, I felt that it was still too warm. So then I went in with hickory smoke, which is gray, and gray is ultimately cool. So gray, you think of like a stormy, cloudy day, it's cold. So if that helps you remember, that really is an easy way to kind of identify. And having both warm and cools in certain backgrounds, I think provides depth. And I love when it provides depth because I think that it's really, really cool. So Mary asked how we did these. If you look at the last mini distress oxide live that I did, it would be on a YouTube channel on my blog. I actually demo how to do this. These are done with distress paint. So they're actually painted so they are permanent and I can clean them off. All right, so we added some mini. That's really nice. Let's put these over here. Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff. See, again, glass mat clean. The rest of me, chaos. Okay, so here's what we got so far. Really good. So there you have it. See, Nicole, that's the best way. It's the easiest way to identify a warm and a cool tone of that. Because even in greens, there are warm greens and cool greens. Even though green is really a cool color, if you're looking, within the hues and the tones of that, you would say that like crushed olive is a warmer green than, I don't know, say, gosh, rustic wilderness, okay? Because one is more yellow and rustic wilderness is kind of more bluish. So it's warm and cool. Okay, that's what we have so far. Now let's keep going. Next, I'm just gonna add, I'm just looking for it. Darn it. And I know I brought it. I'll find it. Here we go. I have a tiny tool that I have a little sanding disc on. I also have a sanding disc on a large one, but I've talked about this. These are the sanding discs from Ranger. If you have any circle dies, you can just die cut this because it has the fabric on it. And if you want it on a tiny tool, you just die cut it with a little circle. The only reason I'm using the small one versus the big one is because I want to just hit a few areas. I don't want to sand the entire thing. So this is just going to allow me to kind of go around to some of those edges. And I feel that this gives me a lot more control because see, I'm actually like following the design. I'm not just going over the whole thing. I'm literally following like say the shape or design of the 4 or the swoop of the 9. Because what this is going to do is this is just going to sand off some of that paint and ink. And then when we go and do our archival, it will take that ink much differently. Do you have to do this? No, you don't have to do any of these steps. It's just one of the things that I like to get a worn look. So see how that's just kind of wearing off the paint right there? It's just cool. And this gives me so much more control because it is flat versus just using a piece of sandpaper. Because you're like, I just use sandpaper. You can. The benefit of this is that it's totally flat. So it's really only sanding the high points of this. And a piece of sandpaper, your fingers tend to kind of push it in everywhere. But you do what you like. It's fun. Just a great way. And notice I'm also turning my background because I can't stress this enough. 3D folders, it's not just innie and outie. There's so many different directions and shapes to this that if you just, get in the habit of kind of moving things around when you're doing something, be that blending or in this case, sanding, you'll hit different areas. You really will. That you think, oh, I've already gotten that. And then, something comes off, you're like, oh, wow. All right. So once we're done sanding, let's just dust that off. So see, we've got just some little worn, skippity areas. Good deal. Okay. Let's just clean that off. Yeah, that's how it works in the studio. You just dust it off. Okay. So next, I'm going to go in with black. So I really want to create a debossed letterpress. I'm only going to use Black Soot Archival. This one's an easy one to know where it goes, but just for the sake of consistency, I'll set it there. But now this is what I mean by really pressing in with your ink pad. Like press, twist. You can see my fingers even a different color. That's how much pressure I'm using. Give it a little swirl. And if you don't have these, if you didn't get these new ones yet, you have a regular size, try it. You have something else, try it. Try these techniques that you're seeing with a different design. So here you can see, I mean, you could already tell like how juicy the ink is on there. It's even in some of those little tiny areas. That's what we want. Okay, place that in, give it a little close, walk your hand back, close that up, close up our archival, and let's run this through. I like this. Today's kind of like a little quiz mania, right, Mario? Like people are asking, but I love that you guys are even, working on answering your own questions. I think that's good. It is. Okay. Did I get this? Nope. I got to use the belly bump on this one. All right. Or I'll use Mario's hand. I just don't want to, oh, see, it's going crooked. Mara, would you mind just
Sure.
putting your hand right there and then just pushing in? Thanks. Give it a, no, you got to give it, he's got his phone in his hand. Uh-oh.
Just a,
Easy. Easy, easy. All right, just place that. I just don't have any room to work.
go ahead.
There you go. Did you get it? I got it. Thanks. It's in. Thank you. All right, I got a little archival. Don't worry, that'll come off with sanitizer. Okay. Okay, that went through. Like I told you, this, I mean, I don't know what it is about this folder other than all the different dimensions, but it is, you know, it's a bit of a booger to get in here single-handedly unless you use the belly or if you have a Mario hand. Mario, can I use your hand again?
Yeah. Okay.
I just don't want to get my belly on camera. You get that?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Sure.
I got it. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. I know. See, now you can see, I just saw a comment, you need a black one. Now you can see why I work with black machines. You get it because you'll never, never know. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Isn't that good?
So
Oh,
awesome.
I don't think I would normally on my other one, I inked it 2 more times and went again, but I kind of like that I'm getting some different variations here than the first one. But just to keep everyone just at peace, including myself, I'm just going to take a little sanitizer and just kind of clean this off for now. A little bit more. Because I want to kind of keep this machine. I need some more sanitizer. I'll clean this after. All right, let's just detach this for now. Put this in. Done. Okay. Beautiful. So let us celebrate this one for now. Okay, so the difference, obviously lighter colors, but I kept running this through. So obviously, oh, that was me. That was 100% me, guys. I threw my cutting pad on the table, it slid off. The more you add black, the more it's going to deboss. So just remember that. Like, it was no different than Cobblestone. If you want your backgrounds to be that saturated, you just keep inking and running it and inking and running it, because you might think, oh, it's not going to hit it again. It will. It's just going to layer that color. That to me is the big difference. Okay. So curious how you know where to align. It's 3D. It sits in like a mold. As soon as your paper goes on the other side of the folder, it literally locks in. So there is no aligning. Your paper just sits where it needs to be. That's how you tell. Okay, so let's finish this. Let's just give this kind of a cool, more of a, I think, more of a kind of varnished wood finish. So for that one, I don't know what that is. There we go. We're just going to take a little bit of Distress Microglaze. When I say a little bit, I mean we're actually using more than what you would on a card. And I'm just going to start just burnishing that in. I'll do one side of the folder before I do the other, just so you can see what a difference it makes if you can't already tell on camera. So I'm just using my fingers and I'm just working that in. You see the difference? Can you even see the difference like in the wood tone, how this is still kind of chalky and hazy, but see how that, and this hasn't been buffed off. Typically after you do this, we're going to buff that off. So I will. Because right now it's still, microglaze actually dries. It's crazy. If you've never used this before, it is an ink sealer. It can seal distress ink, oxide, watercolor. It doesn't seal crayons though, but it would seal watercolor pencils if you want it to. But it goes on kind of like Vaseline. It's super strange because it feels so slimy, but it actually dries. It will evaporate in the air. So always put the lid on when you're done. You can heat it if you want to embed it into the surface, or you can just take a dry paper towel and you're just going to buff off the excess. So you can see in this instance, it's just a little bit of that archival that comes off because all of that other ink is sealed in there. But if you didn't want to buff it off, it would dry. And if you wanted to heat it, then it actually takes away that finish. The heat would kind of liquefy it and it absorbs into the paper. And that's how you can actually work with microglaze as well. If you wanted to say, let's say you go, oh, you know what? I want to add ink on it. If you tried to add ink to this right now, it would just wipe off unless it was archival. But if you used a heat tool and you melted the microglaze to kind of permeate the paper, you could actually ink over the top of it again. Wow, what a cool finish. So let's discuss the main differences. This was when I hit that with that much lighter color that second time. This was when I was a little bit more kind of light-handed with the paint. Both to me, winners. Could you go and add some other some other elements? Sure. If you want, you could take an ink pad right? And let's say we just want to add a little skippity color just to kind of really make them kind of grungy blocks, and then just use a paper towel. See how I just dulled down that paint? Absolutely. Because archival, the fact that it's oil-based, will always sit on stuff. And let's face it, these are print blocks, right? These are letterpress. These should have kind of a time-worn finish. And I'm being really light-handed on this one just to kind of hit the high points. But I just like this. See, that's more of my jam right there. Very, very good. Okay. Drying it with a heat tool and just show you. Really cool. We got one more technique, just going to show you the easiest one, and then we'll wrap it up. But yeah, cool effects. But see how that microglaze, it just gives it such a, like a luster, not a gloss like resist spray, but certainly a cool finish. Okay, let's show you the metallic one. So the metallic one is, we're just going to transform this into this, okay? Just giving it just a very vintage look. And this could be done with any color metallic. I'm just happen to use gold because it kind of looks brass when you're done, but it could be silver, copper, whatever you want to do. All you're going to need for that is black acrylic paint. I'm going to be using distress paint as soon as I can find it. There you go. And you're going to want to use a blending tool. So look, in this case, regulation size, because I'm doing a whole background. This is a piece of dome foam dedicated with paint. Okay, that's it. So let's just take some paint, carefully apply it. There you go. Foam, and work this in. Why foam? Because I want to get this in every little dent, imperfection, crease of that texture, and a brush will not do it. The other reason I like a domed foam is, and you could use a flat foam if that's what you had, is it does allow me to pounce and even get color in more recessed areas. You'll see. All right, so I'm dabbing this on. I'm going to let it sit for a second, just so it can start drying, but we don't want to use a heat tool on this yet. Okay, we want the paint to kind of dry, but not really. Now I'm going to go over it with whatever paint is left in there, and I'm going to start dabbing that paint on. That's what I like about this tool. It holds, that's why it's great for ink, but it also holds paint really, really well. So now I'm just pouncing it, because see how it's getting much heavier in areas? So you don't have to do it over the whole thing. You can if you want, but this also just makes sure that I kind of got color where I want it to be. Okay, this is what we have right now. Okay, doesn't really look like much. The weirdest thing about this is that you kind of have to do it to really understand how this works, okay? Meaning you want the paint to start to dry, but if the paint completely dries on this paper, it's permanent. So you couldn't, I mean, you could take it off with hand sanitizer, I suppose, but it might even take off the metallic finish. But this is, it would just be done if it dries. You couldn't wet it again because distress paint is waterproof. So most acrylic paint is waterproof, by the way. But what I do is I just kind of take my paper towel, and as long as I see that the paint is gripping, which it is, see how it's kind of gripping to areas, then I know that that's pretty good. I can start doing the reveal. And so for the reveal, I'm taking a dry paper towel and I'm just dragging it over in different angles. I'm not totally wiping it off like a kitchen counter or anything. I'm just going on to the thing. Why would you start with the paint on the paper with this technique rather than on the glass mat? Because it was just going on the paper. So it was just easier to move than to scoop it up. I guess that's why. You could start on the glass mat, but I was just moving it around, and I know I didn't waste a single drop of paint on here because 100% of it went on the background. But you absolutely could. If you wanted more control over the paint, you could definitely start on your glass mat. But I just knew it was black and it was going everywhere, so can't really hurt it that way. Okay, perfect. So what you're going to, question, did you say, no, I didn't say distress paint was discontinued. Thank goodness. No, it's not. It's available. All right. Here's what we got. So all I'm doing, see how it's just wearing it away? A dry paper towel, you're just kind of scratching, skipping, moving until you like it. Because even those scratches in the paint, it's happening from that dry paper towel. Really, really cool. And so simple. And once you're happy with it, then we let it dry. Because once it dries, it is permanent. Meaning once we dry it, or at this point, if you know you're done, then you can definitely use a heat tool. But once it's dry, you can't go in with a paper towel, wet or dry, to take any paint off. Okay. Yeah, I saw Simon. It's not discontinued. Thank goodness. Maybe you might have heard that some colors were retired. So hopefully Ranger will bring them back. But yeah, several years ago, they retired like, I don't know, 20 something colors for, I don't even know the reason, but hopefully they'll be coming back. So maybe that's where you got that, you know, from the intrawebs. There you go. I love it. Perfect. Perfect. And the cool thing about this, and I'll bring something in because I did do another one. So this is the same technique as what I just showed you, right? But instead of this being a brass metallic, this is actually black metallic. Okay, it started out as a black, but it was a shiny black. It's still the craft. And instead of using black paint, I use salvage patina paint. So the technique, remember, it's not always just metallic, because this is completely dry. So it's like, you can't take any of that off, which is what makes it so cool and so simple. And the difference here, right? Took off more, took off less. No right or wrong. Completely up to you how you want to do that. But remember that it makes an amazing patina as well, even on metallic. You could take, because there's like a beautiful copper metallic in here. There's actually a couple of different shades of copper, but you can go in with, I'll just open the whole pack. So see, there's like an orange copper, there's kind of a rose gold. Here's the black I was telling you about. See, it's like an onyx black metallic, all craft stock. But you could do that technique and create oxidation. So it could be patina. Now, for the person that asked about, you know, where would I start with the paint? If I wanted to do patina and I wanted it blue and green, then I wouldn't just blob it on there, because you saw how I applied the paint and it would just mix the blue and green to a new color. If I wanted, you know, different color variations, then I would apply my paint on the glass, pick it up and say like blue over here, green over here, and then let it dry and then buff it off. Hope that makes sense. So because it was one color, that's why I just applied it. But it's great that you guys ask questions. That's how we learn. We learn by asking and then doing. So there we have it. I think just some fun ways to incorporate with these new 3D. And if they're, you know, they might be new to you. They might not be, you know, it might have been like, you know, been there, done that, have tried these techniques, haven't. But I think playing around with what you have, and you can see even when you repeat the technique, which we did here, changing the color, changing, you know, the amount of tones that you put onto things, that to me is always the magic of creativity. Let me pull these over.
Oops, sorry.
There we go. We've got our 3 large A5. That's so good. And again, my favorites. Perfect for not only holiday crafting, but obviously making throughout the year. Love these.